This meeting of the Trenton Board of Education is called to order. At this time, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the
flag
of the
of the United States
of America,
and to the republic
for which it
for which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty
and
and
justice for
justice
all.
for all.
Roll call.
Jean Bowie,
Present.
Nicole Bischois,
Present.
Addie Daniels Lane,
Present.
Yolanda Lopez,
Present.
Teron McKnight,
Present.
Gerald Trueheart,
Present.
Jeannie Weeklam,
Present.
Sade Williams. Absent. We have a quorum.
The New Jersey Sunshine Law. The New Jersey Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right to the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted on. On the rules of this act, the Trenton Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting by publishing the date, time, and place, therefore posted on the webpage, the Times, and the Star Ledger. Formal action will take place at this meeting. Mission statement. All students will graduate with a vision for their future, motivated to learn continually and prepared to succeed in their choice of college or career. At this time, I will ask for a motion to adopt the agenda with the following two changes. One, with approval for the revised opening plan or the revised reopening plan with a new opening date of May 3rd, 2021. The second is for item K on the HR agenda, a correction to the name. The name on item K should read Michael Aya Palucci. Again, that's item K on the HR agenda, change of name to Michael Aya Palucci. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Jean Bowie,
Yes.
Nicole Bischois,
Yes.
Yolanda Lopez,
Yes.
Teron McKnight,
Yes.
Gerald Trueheart,
Yes.
Jeannie Weeklam,
Yes.
Sade Williams. Absent. Addie Daniels Lane.
Yes.
Motion passed with amendments.
At this time, we will have remarks by our acting superintendent, Mr. Alfonso Llano.
Thank you, President Lane and Board of Education members for this evening having the opportunity to present to you my superintendent remarks or acting superintendent remarks for this evening. I'm going to share my screen. Just allow me one moment to bring up my slide so we can all see. Good evening, Board of Education members and public. I want to thank you for the opportunity for being here this evening. And I have quite a few items I would like to share. Just to begin with, I want to begin with some inspiration that we all saw online. We had the opportunity to hear Amanda Gorman, America's Youth Poet Laureate, in her poem, The Hill We Climb, which was a beautiful inspirational piece with the historic election of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. So I wanted to take a moment to play a small snippet of this video because it is so powerful, it is so inspiring, and I'd like to share this with our community. So if you would allow me, I'm going to play that for 1 second, please. Okay, so I want to make sure that you're able to see my screen right now. If I can get a thumbs up that we are able to view it, because I want to make sure that everyone's able to see the shared screen.
It just left
Okay,
a few seconds
okay.
ago.
Thank you. Okay. I wanted to share a little bit more of it, but I wanted to make sure that you're able to view all of it. But, you know, it's such a powerful speech that was provided that I also, it inspired me to, and inspired many of us across the United States, you know, to then think about our local students and find inspiration within our student body. So I wanted to take this moment again to congratulate, you know, the Trenton High School honor roll students. This last Friday, these students, 390 students at Trenton Central High School, were recognized for their accomplishments at their virtual honor roll celebration. So congratulations, Tornadoes. 390 students. Students were gathered on a Zoom with Principal Mary Courtney and her team. And it was just a wonderful opportunity to see the students receive their recognition and how excited they were. And also, it was impressive to see the number of staff members, teachers, administrators, and community members who were on the call celebrating the students with me. And I thank you for the opportunity. Again, along this path and this theme of inspirational students, I wanted to also take a moment to acknowledge the work of the Trenton Central High School Volunteer Club, the Office of School Health, Student Youth-Based Services, and Heal the City. They produced a Mask Up billboard series. There are 4 billboards presented throughout the city. And the project's purpose was to encourage the community to stay safe by wearing a mask, by washing their hands, and social distancing. These were produced and worked on with our students. And here's another slide seeing our students as superheroes. You can save lives, be a superhero, you know, sanitize, avoid crowds, get tested. And on the left-hand side, you see a few of our students here from the Interact Club, which is a voluntary club that was supported by our students. Again, it's an impressive video. I want to just show you one piece of it very quickly because it is just very, very powerful.
I see it, but I don't hear anything.
Yeah, that just looks like the, like a snippet.
Sorry, I took it down.
Okay, we could see it, but we could not hear any of the wording.
I'll send it out via email, but I wanted to just take an opportunity. It worked a little bit earlier, and I'm not sure why the first video worked and not the second one. So I apologize for that. All right, let me just get right back to the PowerPoint. Okay. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen so I can make sure everybody's good. Okay, so the first part of the session was just about, you know, inspirational messages from Amanda Gorman, from our high school students who are exploring their academics in the first semester and doing amazing work in the honor roll, and then our Heal the City campaign, which produced 4 wonderful billboards and PSA that's online, so we will be sharing that. On this page here, I wanted to just discuss with you digital participation and average daily attendance. And I wanted to show you this chart. I showed you this chart last month, but we updated it. These are our K-5 elementary schools. And on the left-hand side, you'll see Harrison School. On the right-hand side, you'll see Washington. And the red line is ADA, ADA's average daily attendance. The blue line is DP, digital participation. So this table is organized with the school with the highest average daily attendance, which is Washington Elementary on the right-hand side, and with a digital participation rate that's above 90%. And then a digital participation of 89%. So our students are being marked every day, absent or present, and then our digital tools are collecting their interaction online, and the numbers are very close. So when you look at Washington, 90 and 89%, very similar numbers. If you look at Robbins, 88% ADA, 90% digital participation. Over time, these numbers have gotten tighter. They're getting closer to each other, showing us that for most of our schools, as our teachers take attendance, students are actually connecting with their instruction remotely. So it was good to see. There are some schools where the gap is a little bit wider, and that could be for a number of reasons, which we are exploring. Joyce Kilmer is on this list, and this data only includes Joyce Kilmer's K-5 students, where we see an ADA of 85%. So I will be posting this on the district website for your review, and for your, if there's any questions later on, we can come back to it. But I wanted to show you how we're continuing to track as part of our board goals and around chronic absenteeism, average daily attendance, and student engagement with instruction, which is that digital participation number. On this next slide, I did the same process with our secondary schools. All secondary schools are here. The district average is on the right-hand side, where it says total. 80% ADA for the district, 77% digital participation. So you'll see the numbers are slightly different. Joyce Kilmer's 6th to 8th grade kids had the highest ADA, average daily attendance, and they also had an 81% digital participation rate. So on average, on a daily basis, 81% of the Kilmer students are connecting through one of our district provided devices, connecting to Google Classroom, Zoom, Google Meets, and the tools that we are tracking. Sometimes the numbers don't match up exactly because students are using other devices. We've had this conversation before where students are using maybe an Apple device or a phone, and those statistics are not being captured by the program that we're using. So we're trying to connect students with our devices and making sure they're connecting through Google Chrome. So I wanted to show this to you one more time, and we'll continue the first 4 months under remote, September through December. These are our participation rates and also our average daily attendance. On the next 2 slides, I broke down digital participation by month and also the ADA. So you can see by building how in some schools the percentage is increasing slightly. Some schools are holding the line, you know, and maintaining an equal number of digital participation, while others fall back a little bit. So we're looking at this monthly. Dr. Conway, Ms. Grant are talking to the schools about their ADA and also about their digital participation as we increase the rate of interaction. Our target is 80%. All of the green boxes are at 80% or higher. And this is again the elementary. And here we have our secondary schools. The challenge is different at secondary because more of our secondary students use their own devices. And we're still encouraging students to either download Google Chrome onto whatever device they're using. So when they log into their district supported activities like Google Classroom, Google Meets, so on and so forth, their data is being captured. So again, you can see Joyce Kilmer is here, and this is just inclusive of their 6th through 8th grade students. A strategic planning update. On the left, there's 2 boxes here. Everything in purple is to be done, right? So everything in gray has been completed. Tomorrow we have a strategic plan meeting. It says 11 a.m., but that time was changed to 2 p.m. And it's correct on everyone's calendar. We added on the left-hand side a strategic plan parent advisory meeting. So we're going to call parents together to assist us to look at the work that's been completed to date, to engage them in the process. And then starting this Friday with meeting number 8, we will be working with the administrative team to develop the action plans leading to the final strategic plan presented on the 22nd of February. So that's our strategic plan update in a nutshell. And I just wanted to also point out, there are 5 committees right now working on the strategic plan in these focus areas. These are the focus areas that were identified by our consultant, Jesse Adams, through the data analysis of all of the 4 meetings that were held, 3 last year, 1 this year. Student achievement is a large bucket. Community engagement and partnerships, developing the whole child, staff development and well-being, facilities, infrastructure, resources, safety, and security. Those are the 5 big areas. Tomorrow at 2, we'll be looking at the work that was done around these areas, specifically with a goal statement, specific objectives aligned to these focus areas, and then strategies. The team that begins on Friday will look at developing action plans to meet the objectives that were identified. So we have quite a bit of work to do, but just wanted to point that out to you. Right now, we are in phase 1, as we have discussed throughout the year, and we are projecting a phase 2 switch May 3rd of 2021. Again, the data in our local area shows that in the city of Trenton, we have a 39.2 COVID infection rate per every 100,000 citizens in our area, right? And on the left-hand side, you see just a graphical image of what the wave looked like last March, and now what the wave looks like at this moment, where there's lots of peaks and valleys, but there's also an upswing towards the end of this or mid-month, right around the 19th of January. So although in Mercer County, our county is the 21st of all the counties in New Jersey with the lowest transmission rate, right? So Mercer County is doing quite well compared to the rest of the counties in our state, but the city of Trenton has seen increased rates of transmission. So just wanted to point out that those are the areas that we're looking at with the Trenton Health Team, our local partners, such as Henry J. Austin, Capital Health, and the Office of Emergency Management, and the district's health director. So we are looking at all of these areas to make sure that when we make the decision to finally reopen, we are doing it in as safe a manner as possible. Just a quick announcement related to COVID testing is that we are announcing a new extension of our COVID testing that we've been doing at State Street, Trenton High School West, on Thursdays and Fridays, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., starting the 28th, going through February 19th. So West Campus will start testing again on Thursdays and Fridays, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And as an extension of that COVID testing, we've been meeting with our Department of Health. We had a meeting today where we discussed our pods, our points of distribution for vaccinations and testing. And the Office of Emergency Management is ready to scale up their testing at these pod sites. So rapid testing, which is, you get a result in 15 minutes, is going to be conducted weekly on Tuesdays and Fridays. The process will start this Friday at PJ Hill. PJ Hill is one of the pod sites. So we're currently organizing all of the logistics around it, but the Office of Emergency Management really handles all of the details. Next Tuesday, next Friday, the 2nd and the 5th, we will have more details as far as where those locations are and the times where testing will be conducted. So we're also looking at using these sites with the Office of Emergency Management to be a distribution site for the vaccinations when they come online. So in the meantime, all staff members and all community members on this call are encouraged to register, right? You have to register for your vaccine on NJ Vaccine Scheduling System, NJVSS. I believe we've sent that out a couple times already to our community. If you can get connected, register. You need to be in the system registered to receive the vaccine. Our local health officials are working on developing a plan to support administration of the vaccine within the city limits. Recently we had a COVID situation in central office that resulted in the closure of central office. And that closure resulted in staff members not being allowed in the building to conduct certain workflows, such as preparing physical checks for early childhood providers, out-of-district schools, charter schools. District employees did not experience any disruption as payroll was processed and distributed electronically. So in the future, we know that we're going to continue to have a redundancy plan where certain offices will move to alternate locations to conduct essential services such as transportation, moving to buildings and grounds buildings so they can continue their operations. We're also using cloud-based software options and solutions that give us access to those internal systems so we don't have to be tied to our physical office space. And when a disruption occurs with a negative outcome, we're going to make sure that we communicate that as soon as possible to announce the challenge and explain the next steps. And then as soon as the building reopens, we'll return to the normal schedule. What's important to note that COVID is of course dangerous. We don't want to open our building if there's a positive case. And that's why out of an abundance of caution, we are moving forward with this process and we continue to provide supports as needed. I've recently held a series of connecting with staff and family sessions. I conducted faculty meetings around the reopening plan. On the dates noted on the left-hand side, I met with every K-12 staff member, inclusive of paraprofessionals, custodians, secretaries. All of our team members were together on those 4 days. On the right-hand side, I've held 4 sessions. Well, we've had 2 sessions last week, and we have 2 sessions this week, English and Spanish versions of our reopening plan, where we're talking to the families. We're talking specifically with what are their challenges. We've been able to address a lot of those challenges. So I want to thank Mr. Ortiz and Ms. Crease and Sandra Tabidis and our parent liaisons for being on those calls, because as situations are coming up with registration or material distributions, we are handling those at the same time as they come up. And on the faculty meeting side, our faculty members were very, concerned about how our students doing, how can we increase and improve instruction for those students, and how do we get our hands on resources for to continue this remote instruction delivery of instruction. So a lot of teachers have been emailing me and other team members about different platforms, resources, and supplies that are out there that are important for our students to continue in this instructional program. On the bottom half, we have some projected dates for meetings that will take place after tonight's presentation of the enrollment projection redistricting study. There'll be dates for families, AM and PM sessions, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th of February. And I intend on scheduling faculty meetings on the 1st, the 2nd, the 4th, and the 5th, again, similar to what I did at the beginning of the month. I also want to highlight some partnerships because it's important to talk about all the work that we're doing with it, with our partners outside the city. Recently, we were able to secure over $700,000 in grant money to support a Future Ready initiative, which will produce a technological assessment of the district, a communications strategy development, and also help us acquire external resources to support partnerships. This grant money is going to be managed and worked through our TPEF partners so they can connect with our grantor who wishes to be anonymous. But that's a huge support for our school district, especially around Future Ready technology assessments. Again, we have secured a 3 to 4 year technology grant to support middle school students and staff. A formal announcement will be made soon, but this is a multi-year, multi-million-dollar grant award, which as soon as we get the go, we're going to share this widely. It is impressive, exciting, and it's going to really support our middle school students. So absolutely excited for that to be announced formally. We're also working with Taiho Oncology, which is a group out of Princeton's Japanese pharmacology group, and they are going to help us develop some supports for our high school students in STEM and career options. We have meetings set up with that organization. They're looking to invest. It's all about investing in Trenton and in our students. And our public school system, our leadership teams are going to be supporting the Capital City Community Coalition 4C's Fishbone root cause analysis of gun violence in the city. This effort is going to be led by one of our board members, Gene Bowie, with the 4Cs organization to bring together diverse organizations, leaders, and thought partners from a wide range of backgrounds to engage in that Fishbone protocol, which we have used in the district twice, once at PJ Hill and once through our special education department, which has borne a lot of fruit and a lot of improved practices. So we look forward to that. And also TCNJ, we're working with them on multiple pathways, talking about recruitment, pathways to certification for district employees, pathways to help us certify paraprofessionals to turn into the teaching lane, looking at residency programs that will help lead more teachers into our programs, and continue to expand access to behavioral health services through the College of New Jersey. So very exciting work that we're doing with TCNJ. This is just a snapshot. There are many more partners out there, but I would like to spotlight these partners and also have a place on our website where we will be able to celebrate the work and the investments that they are putting into our community. Again, one of the most recent developments is ETS reached out to us to work on developing a college promise program specifically designed for Trenton Public Schools. College promise programs are a way to help combat the barrier to education that rising cost presents. They do this by covering at a minimum the cost of tuition and fees, making a college degree more affordable and accessible to students. Each program can tailor its particular features and funding strategies to the needs and available resources of its area. This is exciting work that we're about to launch in the next week with ETS and developing a way to really look at what other sister cities are already enacted with their college promise programs. It's very exciting. And on our last note here, I just wanted to point out, we will be, knowing that we have extended our remote window, we have to distribute materials. So our team members are working collaboratively to develop a plan to get the materials out to the kids. And that'll be happening beginning January 22nd for our secondary schools and February 2nd for our elementary schools. So at this time, I want to say thank you for the opportunity. I hope I did not go too long, but there's a lot of information to share and not a lot of time to do it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. We appreciate that. And certainly I'm happy to hear of some of the community partnerships that are actually being developed and rolled out at this particular time. So tonight we have the return of our student performance. And so Superintendent Yano, I don't know if you want to go ahead and introduce our student performance for tonight?
Absolutely. This is exceptional and exciting. As you can see, board meetings have changed with the delivery of performances electronically using new media. We often had to, we would watch these great performances in the building, and many of our board members expressed, we need to get back to those performances. So under the direction of Norberto Diaz, our supervisor of visual performing arts, he's working with our VPA teams to put this together. So I have a special announcement to make tonight that Principal Mary Courtney and Vice Principal Tilatima Bose are proud to present the Trenton High School Orchestra. Under the direction of our own maestro, Joseph Pucciati, the ensemble will perform the 1970 Van Morrison hit Moon Dance. The custom-made special music arrangement and orchestration by Maestro Joseph Pucciati demonstrates differentiation of instructions, since all students are all playing together at contrasting levels of instrumental musical mastery. There will also be an alto saxophone jazz solo by Arlene Rios Montero and a trombone solo by Eddie Garcia. Every student recording themselves at home on their own device, and Hedgepeth Williams music teacher Danny Hall edited the entire asynchronous performance into one amazing production. Trenton High School marching band director Ted Plunkett can also be seen on the keyboards. Now I want to make sure I do this right, because this is so exciting. So if everyone, make sure you have your screen on full screen, put your volume up. I'm going to need some help to make sure that when I play this, you can actually hear it, because I don't want to mess up like I did that other video. So here we go. Let me go share the screen. Okay, board members, if you see the screen, it's a gray screen, give me a thumbs up. Okay, make sure my volume is up. I'm not muted. Here we go.
No audio.
Wow, are you blown away or what? That was incredible and amazing. Our students are just spectacular. Our teachers are amazing. The production, outstanding. Board members, I don't know, what do you think about that? That was just too much. So excited.
That was out of sight. That was out of sight. Oh, man.
Yeah, so it's great to have our student performances as part of our school board meetings again. That was something that was actually missing. So very happy that we were able to virtually pipe them in, and they were able to do as we've seen so many others do. So thank you to all those who participated in that. Thank you to the Trenton Central High School Orchestra, the staff members, the students, technicians, all involved in that particular piece. It certainly was awesome. So round of applause for all that were actually involved in that. And thank you for gracing us with your presence once again. So we look forward to our student performances in whatever way, shape, or form they will take place in our future board meetings. So again, thank you. And so I'm breaking up the agenda slightly because I know that the board member committee chair reports were supposedly before the student performances, but I wanted to kind of break that up a little bit. And so now I'm going to go to the reports by the committee chairs, and we'll come back to the report by the school enrollment projections and redistricting study. So if we could at this time, we'll start with Mr. Bowie, we'll actually start with you. If you would give us the school operations report, please.
Okay, yes, ma'am. So we met on Wednesday. We looked at transfers, the secretary's report, treasurer's report, also the bill list, staff travel, and also the donations. And then these donations are really important. People sacrifice for our students. And so I'm going to just read them out loud. So this will take a few minutes longer than normal. The first donor was Aramark. The gift, 20 ShopRite gift cards valued at $40 each. And the recipient of this particular gift, this donation, Student Services, Family and Community Engagement. The next is from the New Jersey YMCA State Alliances. Their gift, 150 folders, 25 reusable water bottles, 500 pencils and pens. Again, that donation goes to Student Services, Family and Community Engagement. Camp for Kids Closet, 5,000 school supplies, materials, 600 book bag items. Again, that also goes to Student Services, Family and Community Engagement. Michelle Roop, baby grand piano, estimated value $3,000, donated to Trenton Central High School. And Princeton University, professional instrument transporters, transport of the baby grand piano to the high school, and the value of that was $500. And so really appreciate the generosity of these donors, because our students really deserve it. And from an operational standpoint, that was very exciting to see the different partners that are willing to invest in our students. And we're talking about sizable donations, 700,000 worth $1 million. And so investing in, when you invest in our children, you invest in our cities. So being able to make investments in infrastructure at a time when we're still underfunded and we can get partners to donate to making us what we should be it's a big deal. So that's it for me, Addie.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'll move on to human resources.
Okay, for human resources, we did have 3 new hires, 1 para, 1 generalist, and 1 world language teacher. So we're happy about that. From the new hires that we had for the custodians, we did have several can't even talk. We rescinded several offers for various reasons. And actually, there's really not much more except for the regular leaves of absences and return of leave of absences. We're happy to report that those numbers have gone down, considering the numbers that we used to have last year and the year before. And that's about it for human resources today.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to family community engagement, and we might as well include policy as well. Gerald? Okay. Not seeing Gerald. All right, so at this point, I will go on to superintendent search. If we could hear from superintendent search, Tehran.
Good evening, everyone. I want to give you one minor update on the superintendent search. We have finalized the community forum survey, which we hope to be released by the end of week. During that time, we will give the public, parents, students, community members, all who are willing to participate in the survey, about 10 to 14 days to complete that survey. And then we will be followed by an actual community forum via Zoom, which will be facilitated by our New Jersey School Board rep. So we're looking forward to that. I'll have a specific date for you that will be specified on the survey, but more than likely, we will be looking at mid to late February to have the actual community forum, because we want to have an appropriate time for the survey to be out, so members of the public can complete that survey. So that's my update, and you have a good night.
Okay, thank you. And I see, Gerald, are you prepared now to give us the family and community engagement and policy update?
Yes, Addie. Hope you can hear me. I'm not sure my audio is good. I see nods, so it must be. So I'll start with policy. I'll say family community engagement for last. On the agenda tonight, we have our second readings of our public participation policy, which was updated to support our virtual environment during the COVID-19 pandemic, to allow folks to sign up at certain times because we're not in brick and mortar in person anymore. So that's up for a second reading tonight. as well as our 7 series policies that were presented at our last board meeting are also up for a second reading. We are rescinding one of our COVID-19 policies because it expired on 12/31/2020. So we were rescinding one of our COVID-19 policies. So that's the policy update. We also are working on policies in our 5,000 series and 8,000 series. We'll begin to work on that. We had a conversation this past Thursday. We'll be meeting every single week, working hard to get those policies reviewed. We also did an overall review of all of our policies that we've completed in terms of approved over the last year or so. It's quite a laundry list of policies. I don't have that list in front of me. We'll share that with the whole board as we move forward, but it was an extensive list of policies that we've completed. And I asked our General Counsel, James Roll, to complete that list and to provide us with a list of regulations that we have to go back to, circle back to, and begin to work on those policies that require regulations to be updated. We've identified those policies that need regulations, and we'll be working on getting those accomplished and completed for either our February or our March board meeting for first reading. And so at our February or March board meeting, we'll have 8,000 series policies reviewed for a first reading, potentially our first reading of our regulations, and our 1,000 series. And then, of course, working on our 5,000 series, continuing to work on our 5,000, 8,000 series that remain that need to be completed for a first reading in future board meetings. So that's where we are in terms of our policies. I think we've come a long way. And it is a marathon, not a sprint. So we continue to work hard to get these policies updated, revised, and the regulations completed as we continue to move forward as a district. And so we work on that very hard. The other thing in terms of family and community engagement, I know many of you already know we're on WIMZ 1300 AM on Tuesday nights. It airs at 7, as well as on WPHY Verizon Channel 28 on Thursdays at 11 p.m. And Alfonso Llano, our acting superintendent, pretty much, I mean, in his presentation, he covered a lot of the materials that we went over on our radio broadcast, as well as, of course, on the TV broadcast at 11 p.m. on Thursday. But just to kind of give you a snippet, and I don't want to be long here, but we want to give you a snippet of the weeks that we deal with in terms of the categories. Week 1, we have our school leader spotlight. We started this in January, and the first two schools that we highlighted were principal of 9th grade academy, Dewar Wood and her team, Yvette Reyes, the vice principal, Mark Hoppy, vice principal, and also Dr. Keisha Gaiman, the principal of Harrison School. We highlighted those schools as our spotlight for our school leader spotlight. And of course, our assistant superintendent, all of our assistant superintendents are on the line, Dr. Channing Conway, Hope Grant, as well as Wilfredo Ortiz, and of course, our acting superintendent, our board president, Addie Daniels Lane. And all of our, of course, our committee members are also invited to be a part of that call. That would be Yolanda Lopez, Romero Lopez, as well as Sade Williams. So they are also welcome to be on those calls. Our second week, we had our community partner update, and we had many of the partners that Alfonso spoke of tonight. We had Dr. Kimi Ali from Henry J. Austin Health Center, Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Rachel Evans from Henry J. Austin. We had a special guest, Nicole Tong from Homeworks Trenton, great presentation, all were great presentations. Greg Paulson from the Trenton Health Team, of course, Michael Freeman, our supervisor of nursing, as well as all of our assistant superintendents and our acting superintendent, our board president on the call as well. So that was a great community update and relationship with our community partners and all the work that they're doing. And again, a lot of the information that was shared tonight and Alfonso Llano's update for tonight. Our third one, which is probably maybe the most exciting, and I'll close out on this, is our student and parent voices. This was happening our week 3, which was just last week. And we had like 3 or 4 parents and 4 or 5, 6 students, of course, with our assistant superintendents on the line, helping through our students and our parents through this conversation and this dialogue on virtual environment and the challenges that they face and successes they're having. And it was so overwhelming for me and so eye-opening, I think, for the entire group to hear from our parents and hear their struggles with virtual environment and hear the challenges that our students are facing. And here's one of the most important things. Denise Crease was also on the line on that particular evening. Here's probably one of the most important things I think we've taken away from the student and parent voices, is that we were able to identify students and parents that needed support and help. And one of the areas that's so very important is social emotional learning. And we were able to pick up on that right away and get direct support to the students who need the help and the parents who need the support. The other area was technology issues that we learned, that we know of, but we were able to address those and work with those parents and find other parents who need the help and support, not only the parents, but also, just as importantly, the students. But also we were able to touch base with understanding this is also dealing with our teachers and our staff that need social emotional support, emotional support. They're going through the same type of virtual environment and have the same issues, just like a parent or a student would. And we want to make sure that we support all of our staff, all of our students and parents as we work through this COVID-19 pandemic in this virtual environment. Our next update, which is tomorrow night, will be our students update on student achievement. I look forward to Alfonso presenting tomorrow night on the radio, tomorrow night at 7, and then of course on Thursday at 11 p.m. on WPHY Verizon Channel 28. So that's all I have for tonight. Great things are happening in the city of Trenton Board of Ed. I look forward to being part of the Community Engagement Committee, and I like my other members to come and support and be on part of it, Yolanda, as well as Sade. Look forward to additional work as we move forward. Thank you so much for the time.
Okay, thank you for that update. Certainly there's a lot going on with policy and that community, family and community relationships, very, very important. All right, and so moving on to the final committee reports, Curriculum Committee. The Curriculum Committee met on January the 19th. That was a Tuesday. And at that time, we reviewed the agenda. We discussed online extracurricular activities and how these would be structured and any specific requirements for participation in these extracurricular activities. Of note of some of the proposals submitted, we saw one about curriculum writing, and there was a project that is ongoing to put forth revisions to the current curriculum. Also, we discussed honors courses for middle school students. We also discussed CTE programming, and also looking forward to amend the high school course catalog, some amendments being proposed for that. There are a couple of donations which were moved to the finance agenda that you heard from Mr. Bowie's operation report. We had an update on special education. We noted that there was one CAP was closed, 2 are still open. There are no new state or parent complaints. There is a settlement still in litigation on one particular case. The planning for the extended school year, or ESY, is taking place. There will possibly be an increase in the capacity and also the ability to provide for some compensatory programs and services to some of our special needs students. And we're also looking to be sure that students can access other programming in terms of extracurricular programming that may be offered. We want to make sure that they're able to take advantage of those particular services as well. So that is the update from the Curriculum Committee, which deals with overall curriculum as well as special education. In addition, just like to share a few things from my own report in terms of school board president. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations to senior Trenton High School student Eric Vasquez. He is, of course, our most recent student that was admitted to Harvard for the fall of 2021 with a full scholarship. So congratulations to Eric Vasquez, his family, and of course, all those who contributed toward his development as a student. Also, congratulations. It was great to see Trenton educator Tawanda Taylor. She was highlighted during the video that preceded the governor's State of the Union address. So kudos to her, and thanks to Nicole for sharing that particular piece of information. I had the opportunity to attend a meeting with the district and local health officials where the district's reopening date was discussed, and whereby that particular group put forth a recommendation to delay the return to in-person learning. And you heard that particular delay involves moving the return to in-person schooling to the date of May 3rd of 2021. And that came about as a result of the discussions that were had at that particular meeting. In addition, one of the partnerships that I saw that's being, I guess, reinvigorated is the partnership with the district and the Trenton Music Makers. And certainly I'm looking forward to our students being able to access the added opportunities that that program can bring, and especially in terms of developing their musical skills and talents. Also had an opportunity to attend a meeting of the 4 Cs with our acting superintendent and board member Jean Bowie, where there were several presentations, and one involving potential interventions, informal interventions for juveniles who may come in contact with the juvenile justice system. And then a second presentation involved a proposed redesign of the Perry Street Transportation Corridor, which of course is one of the main corridors in our city, and it impacts on a number of schools. So it's important to get involved with that whole project just to make sure that our students and parents and their needs are taken into account as this particular area is being redesigned in terms of pedestrian as well as automobile traffic. And the final part of it was a discussion, and this was mentioned also earlier, that in effect, board member Jean Bowie was involved in developing a proposal for root cause analysis to the gun violence that has impacted our city. And certainly, again, that's something that we all have to be concerned with as residents here in the city and people who, of course, live and work and travel throughout the city. And then finally, I was able to attend 2 city council meetings along with our acting superintendent and other district officials to advocate for the bond ordinance that would support the capital improvement projects that had been agreed to at previous Board of School estimate meetings. And so we're looking forward to returning to the city council meeting, I believe it is on February 4th, so that we can pursue an affirmative vote in terms of that bond ordinance that's going to provide for capital improvements for the district. And just one final note that was mentioned earlier, that partnership with our nursing supervisor or director, Micah Freeman, Melda Grant at school-based youth program, and the Heal the City project with Stacy Heading, that these billboards are being placed around the city, encouraging, again, all of our city residents to mask up, and of course, presenting it in a manner that our students can relate to. So certainly we want to thank them for that partnership. And if you get a chance, do check out those billboards. They're in all 4 wards of the city, and our students, again, are prominently featured in these particular billboards. So that's just a quick update in terms of that. All right, so you've heard from all of the committees at this particular time. And so did I overlook anyone in terms of committee? All right, got everyone? All right, so at this time, we're moving on. We have another presentation. And this presentation is from the school enrollment projections and redistricting study. And this is from our demographer that we hired to perform this task, Dr. Ross Haber. So Dr. Haber and Mr. Yano, it's all yours.
Yes, thank you again, President Lane, for the opportunity to provide an introduction to this important work that started over a year ago when the district approved the process to look at our enrollment projections. So at this time, I would like Ms. Kelly Criquet to take the floor and provide the introduction to Mr. Haber.
Good evening. Good evening, fellow residents of the city of Trenton, Board President Lane, Superintendent Yano, TPS colleagues, and all who are assembled. I am excited to introduce Dr. Ross Haber. Over a year ago, the board allowed the district to seek the services of a demographer. Dr. Haber was chosen among several respondents, in large part because of his extensive experience in the field and his significant experience with districts in the state of New Jersey. He'll go over his credentials and pedigree during his presentation. But first, a little bit about why this presentation. The district has not had a demographic study completed for at least 10 years. In that time, the city that we serve has grown and changed. Also in that time, the board has closed buildings, opened buildings, changed the school configurations, but those decisions were made without the benefit of a demographic study. We have also known about our need for demographic services for the last several years because of concerns raised about overcrowding in some of our schools and classrooms. We have tried some workarounds such as overflow schools and program shifts to try to balance the enrollment, but again, absent the data, they have not been sufficient. This evening, we have the data and we have data-driven recommendations. I present to you Dr. Ross Haber.
Good evening, everybody. So nice to be here and so nice to meet with you. Just a very brief overview of myself. I was on screen sharing, okay. My own background is not necessarily statistics. My background is education. I spent almost 30 years as a public school teacher in the city of New York. I was a high school principal in New Jersey in Hillside and Union County. I spent a number of years as a principal on Long Island in Uniondale. I've taught at Montclair State University and Kane College, Manhattan College. So I tell you all of the, and I achieved my doctorate in the late 70s from Teachers College, Columbia University. I tell you all this because when I do these studies, my priority isn't numbers. My priority really is education. So I approach all of these things understanding what the needs of the schools are, what programs need to exist in certain places, what grade level configurations seem to work, what the necessity of keeping class sizes small, of paying real attention to the individual needs of students, and of course being sensitive to things like special education students and sensitive to the needs of bilingual students, sensitive to the need of newcomers to this country. So all of those things kind of go into the bucket in terms of what I'm doing. Of course, my other constraint is that I am bound by statistical norms. In terms of enrollment projections, I follow all New Jersey state guidelines as you move along, and perhaps have to update your long-range facility plan if you start looking to make expansions and renovation and construction. I follow those guidelines. So just a brief overview of the two processes that I did. The first is that the study used as its base what's called the cohort survival method of enrollment projections. And what that is it follows groups of students as they move through the school system over a period of 6 years. So for example, we look at when first graders become second graders, what was the change in that grade level? If there were 100 students in first grade in year 1, and when they move into second grade in year 2, if it's 110 students, then we see a 10% growth. And what we do that is grade to grade and average that over a 5-year period, come up with 5 multipliers. We take those multipliers and we use those in the current year's projection to move forward. So that's the cohort survival method. Now, the other things that one other thing, kindergarten is projected on the basis of births 5 years earlier than kids entering kindergarten. So in other words, children born in 2010 become kindergartners in 2015. And what we do is we take a look at the growth or decline between those things to project future kindergarten growth in the school district. So those are the basics of cohort survival. The second addition to that is the impact of new housing developments that may be coming into the city or into a town or into a community, and how are they going to impact the enrollment over a period of time. So what I do is I combine the statistics of the cohort survival method with projections based upon the type of housing units coming in, the number of bedrooms in those units, units in similar communities, and that kind of a thing. And that kind of moves me to the projection. So the data that I use, okay, just in this projection period is, one, the enrollment data. No, come back, Kelly, come back. Okay.
Yeah.
The enrollment data was provided to me by both the Trenton School District and the State Education Department, and it's based on the fall ASSA, the official enrollment of the schools. Birth data comes from the New Jersey Department of Health Bureau of Vital Statistics. Housing data will come from the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Trenton. Facility information, because we also want to take a look at how these projections impact the school buildings, was provided by the district, which included floor plans and building functional capacity information. And also, I looked at previously done long-range facility plans, not to mention input from Ms. Howard and Ms. Creek in terms of the buildings. And by the way, one of the things that has made this a really good project is that I've got data in a timely manner. I got it in the format that I needed it. I got great input from Ms. Howard and Ms. Creek and Ms. Diano. I think we worked pretty well together over the last couple of months. So without their input and help, I couldn't have done this. So again, I want to express my appreciation to them. So now let's go to the second level. Next slide, please. Okay. So the next thing I did was, after I did the enrollment projection, the next thing I did was to start to come up with a redistricting plan. And the redistricting plan had a number of factors. Factor number one was location of students, location of schools. Factor number two was what will be the impact in the future of the enrollment projections on the redistricting. And the third thing was what seems to be the most efficient or the best arrangement to conserve and capture space in the school building. So what I did was I tested a number of different organizational structures. I tested a K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12. In other words, a K-5 elementary, 6, 8 middle school, and of course a 4th-grade high school. I also tested out a K-4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and high school. I didn't like that there was a little too much student movement, and it didn't yield. Neither one of those first two achieved the goal of creating additional space and lowering class sizes. So at the end, what I came up with seems to be working the best. And over time, you guys have to make that assessment, was a K3, 4, 6, and 7, 8 structure, whereby we have K3 buildings, then these migrate to 4, 6 buildings, and finally to a 7, 8 middle school level. And the result of these seem to provide the most room and just the best direction for the school district in terms of capturing space. And I think in a couple of minutes, you'll understand how important that is. Well, anyway, this data came from base maps that are taken from they're called a Tiger file, and they're basically a government survey of all of the street networks throughout the country, and they're updated on an annual basis. So that's the base map. I add to, and in that base map, there are other sources for addressing information. So on the map, I've got the entire street network, and I've got the actual addresses of all the residential units in Trenton, at least those that are in a database. The program itself I use is proprietary. It's my own, but it's based upon ArcMap. And ArcMap is a mapping platform that's a national standard. So in other words, base maps come from the government. I take those and I run them through a platform called ArcMap. And then from that, I use my proprietary program to do my redistricting, my transportation, and those different kinds of things. The student file that I used, because the next step in this process was to locate students at where they live, so that when I start doing attendance zones, I can start doing countouts based upon actual locations of students. And the baseline in the study were your current attendance zones. And there were no active maps. So what I needed to do is I really needed to go to your street directory and actually calculate all the streets and addresses within each of the attendance zones to start as my baseline. So those are the data sources. That's what I used. It took a couple of months to get these things really tight so that I had confidence in terms of what I was doing. So now let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the first thing that is really important to note is that trend line. That is a straight line growth. In the 2014-15 school year, there were 11,083 students in Trenton. By the 2019-20 school year, that number was 12,638. And the projection going out to 2024, 25 is 14,479. Now I'm anticipating a question. Okay, why? Because the 2019-20 is my last ASSA number. Okay, when I was doing this project, the official enrollment data wasn't ready from the school district. And by the time it got ready, I was well into the redistricting project. The other thing too is that at this particular point, I don't have 1,000% faith in the enrollment just because of how attendance may be impacted by COVID. But I'm committed very shortly, as soon as we move through this particular process, I'm committed to update the enrollment projections so that we would be using the actual current enrollment, and then I would project out to 25, 26. Statistically, you don't want to go out more than 5 years. There is as the statistics go further out, they become less reliable. After 5 years, they almost become duplicated. So when you start getting to 5 or 10 years, the numbers it's called regression towards the mean. In other words, the further out you go, the closer things come to an average and the projections become less reliable. But anyway, I think the striking thing about this is to show that the growth in Trenton has been tremendous, and it's really not stopping anytime soon as far as my projections are concerned. Next slide, please. Okay, to get what this particular slide shows is that I went to each of the individual school buildings, at least statistically, looked at them to see where the impacts were, where the greatest impacts were, where the baseline of students, the greatest baseline of students were, which schools were showing the most growth, and by the same token, which schools were showing the most stress in terms of numbers of students, class size, availability of space, availability of instructional space, and those kinds of things. So I developed this chart. You certainly should look at it afterwards because it'll kind of give you a really good feel as to what's actually happening on a school by school basis in the school district. It also shows how the school was impacted by closures such as closures such as Jefferson and closures such as Martin West and Trenton West, how that the district was growing, but you were actually shutting down capacity. And I think that it's at this particular point that needs to reverse. Okay, next slide, please. Kelly? Okay, all right. Now, what made this project challenging, okay, was the most challenging thing about this project, notwithstanding the growth, was the fact of geography and school location. What this map is showing you, and this is Route 1. Route 1 divides the city pretty much in half. And what it showed me is that this area below Route 1, the southeastern part of the city, is the most dense part of the city. It's most dense in terms of population. It's most dense in terms of students. It's most dense in terms of needs of bilingual programs. And yet, as you can see, the schools are greater schools as you move more west in the community. So this governed the way I had to start to deal with the actual attendance zones and the grade level configurations, because in this part of the community, you had capacity and you had less population. In this part of the community, you don't have capacity, meaning you don't have enough classroom space, you don't have enough room in the school buildings. And so what that results in now is that there truly are numbers of kids who really don't identify with a particular attendance zone because of overcrowding. A child may go down to Washington, and the school might tell the parent, listen, we don't have room in this particular school, but we think there's room in Mott. So now that child may be living in one attendance zone, but will be going to a school in another. And by doing it that way on a piecemeal basis, you're not keeping groups of kids together in the same neighborhood. And that's a point I want to emphasize as we go through this. In some cases, We may not be able to locate a school within its own attendance zone, but we will keep an entire neighborhood together. So even if children are going to school outside of their immediate neighbor, they'll be going as a whole neighborhood. And so they'll be with, for lack of a better word, be with their friends, be with their peers, be with the kids who they do community things with, be with the kids who they play ball with, or belong to whatever organizations they are together. So that was important for me, to make sure not to cherry pick kids, okay, but to make sure that any children that will move, that had to change schools, they're moving as large groups. But this map doesn't even do justice to how dense the populations are, because even though you're seeing, if you can't zoom in on this, but in the live database and in the report you'll see that there are individual kids, but if they all live at the same address, they're laid on top of each other. So it's even more dense than it appears here. And of course, the other issue, and as I said, the great stress on the bilingual program down there, and the location of schools in relation to the population is problematic. Can we move on to the next one, please? Okay, so what were the guiding principles or the objectives of this analysis? Okay, so I wanted to follow, as I'm doing this, I wanted to follow a set of guidelines that kind of kept me grounded and focused on what I was doing. So, of course, the first thing was to analyze space utilization in each school building based upon building capacity and available instructional spaces. I mean by that classrooms, labs, those kinds of things. The second was to analyze different organizational structures in order to determine if they can promote more efficient use of space in each school, basically to increase classroom space. I didn't go in this with any particular bias towards any particular organizational level. My bias was to creating space and reduce class sizes. Okay, and that mode, to ensure that the existing school buildings can accommodate growing enrollment. I think that even if there were money available in the state to build, that's over a long period of time. The problem the district has exists now, and it's going to exist before you can even create additional space in the school district with new buildings or renovations or those kinds of things. So it was important to focus on what we could do now. As I said, ensure equity in terms of programs such as art and music and PE between each school, elementary, intermediate, middle school. It's just to make sure that space is available in every building, to make sure that every child has access to this program. It may not necessarily in every case have room for it, but but this effort has to be made to make sure that every child has access to these kinds of things in the community. The second thing was the other object, of course, was ensure that bilingual programs are efficiently and effectively placed. There is a very large bilingual program in Trenton. And what we'd like to do, if possible, in as many cases as possible, keep bilingual kids in their home school. It may not work in all cases just because of size and because of capacity and classroom space, but the focus is to try to keep all bilingual kids in there, keep bilingual kids in their home school best of our ability. Also, in the same mode, to ensure the needs of special education students are met within the framework of their IEPs and program locations. So we want to make sure, and we certainly, over time, whatever is implemented, that it has to be closely watched by your directors of bilingual programs, your director of special education, to make sure that programs are located both in the least restrictive environment for kids and as convenient for kids as possible. One of the tasks was to limit the enrollment in the elementary schools to 500 or fewer students. In other words, smallness was the goal here. Let's make the schools as small as possible. Let's get the kids as much individual attention as possible. Let's create as little chaos as possible. And the smaller the school, schools of 500 to 600 elementary school kids are not as effective as schools of 200, 300, and 400 elementary school children. So that's one of the goals, okay? Now, in order to do this, we need to reopen Stokes as an elementary school. We need to reopen Cadwalader, and I'm not going to try to say that again, as an elementary school, and West Trenton and West Trenton as a middle school, so that we can accommodate these populations. In other words, we are, as I said earlier in this presentation, over a period of time, through your growth, through your enrollment growth, you were reducing capacity. Now we need to take back and increase capacity. And opening these schools is a great step doing that. Now, the next one is an interesting one. While it was not totally, it was creating small schools in terms of your current building locations was a little difficult. So in my discussions with the administrative group that I work with, one of the things we wanted to look at was the possibility of creating schools within the school. So in other words, if we have a school with 500 capacity, okay, we could break that, just as an example, this isn't exact, but we could break it up into 2 schools of 250, with each building have its own administrator. And what that would do, that would make sure that we're keeping class sizes as small as possible. And in the elementary schools, I don't have a single case where I've gone over 21 students in a class. In a lot of cases, more like 18, 19. But 21 was the absolute ceiling for doing this. And so far it looks like it can work. And then the final thing is to increase walking and reduce transportation. In other words, get kids closer to their schools so there's less of a need of putting them on a school bus. And in a place like Trenton, I'm sure that that rush hour is a nightmare. And the less buses we have on the road for general education kids, the better we can be. One of the things that I will measure is the actual numbers of students who live outside or in the mandate. In other words, students who are mandated to get transportation by state requirements. So we'll do a full analysis of that, and I'm going to do that with the next student download that which I just obtained from Kelly Creek. Okay, so go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is the proposed grade level organization. Okay, so on the elementary schools, we're going to look at a K3 organizational level: Columbus, Cadwalader, Franklin, Gregory. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Is going to be one of the split elementary schools. Mott, P.J. Hill, and P.J. Hill Annex are going to be one of the split elementary schools. Then Robbins, Stokes, Washington, Wilson will round out the K3. On the intermediate school level, which would hold grades 4 through 6, we have Kilmer A and B. Kilmer is split. We have a Grant A and B, okay, with Grant being split. Harrison will be a 4-6 school. Monument is split A and B, and then Parker Rivera, and we're going to, and we need to reopen Robeson for an intermediate school to take that space back. So between reopening Stokes, reopening Cadwalader, reopening Robeson, and reopening West Trenton, we are capturing space. Is it enough space? I think for the foreseeable future, I believe this is sustainable. But if the growth continues, it's not sustainable forever. The growth here is just, as you saw earlier, going through the ceiling. So Kilmer, Grant, Monument, King, and Hill will be split into 2 separate schools within the same building. Robeson will be opened as a 4-6 intermediate school, and each of the schools will have its own administrator. So the split schools will each have an administrator for each there'll be 2 separate schools in the same building, so each will require its own administrator to make that work. Okay, next slide, please. So now let's look at the K3 proposed attendance zones. Bring up the map, please. Okay. So what you're looking at on this map, are the designed attendance zones. So if we take a look at the map, this pink area or salmon colored area, that's the Stokes attendance zone. This green area is Cadwalader attendance zone. And this, I guess, violet area, that's going to be the Gregory attendance zone. You can see Gregory School is outside of this attendance zone. Okay, as we move up the ladder, we've got, this is Dr. Martin Luther King attendance zone, and this is area 1, where the school is, and then coming down here is area 2 to capture the population. Monument is, I'm sorry, Monument's in middle school, I'm sorry, take that back. Columbus is the blue area over here. Wilson covers this area down in this part of town. Robbins is the gray. Washington is the purple, I guess. Franklin is the gold. So those are, and Hill, I think I said Hill is the gray, and Mott is the green down here. So for the most part, these schools are in their zones except for Gregory. Part of Martin Luther King Jr. School school is here, but there are two zones over here. And Hill split. Yeah, Hill and Hill Annex are in one. They're like one large zone, but there's a split. There's a street guard which children are in the annex and which children are in the main school. So those are the attendance zones, and these do lighten up these lighten up or address the density in this area. So that in terms of capacity, in terms of classroom, this does the job of keeping class sizes down and taking advantage of being within capacity of each of the buildings. And in some cases, lower capacity, because we could fill up every building now. But the problem with that is we move into next year, we're overcrowded again. So what we've also tried to do in this process is keep space open, is not use the buildings to 100% capacity, to make sure that we put another 30 or 40 children in the school building, because that is going to happen unless something drastic happens. That's going to happen over the next 5 years. And what we don't really know right now is this god awful pandemic. How would that is that suppressing enrollment? So we won't know that for a while, which is what I addressed earlier in my projections. That kind of concerns me. Next one, please. Next slide. Now the 4-6 attendance zones. All right. So now what this is showing is the split schools. So for example, Parker is its own attendance zone. It's here. Rivera is this gold attendance zone. Okay. Even though the school is up here, the attendance zone is here. But these children in the zone, first of all, they're a little older, so they can walk walk further than the younger children. And second of all, it is a neighborhood. You know, I wish I could pick up the school and move it down here, but it can't be done. So we have to, what did Willie Sutton, I may be the only one old enough to remember, he said, they asked him why he robs banks. He says, that's where the money is. Well, same thing here. We've got to go to where the schools are. We want to keep the kids intact. Okay, so that's Rivera, that's Parker, that's Harrison down in this corner. Okay, I lost my train of thought here. This is Grant, I'm sorry. So these are the two zones of Grant. Even though Grant is located over here, this is Grant here. These are the two zones of Grant. Robeson is over here, and up here is Kilmer. Kilmer Zone 1, Kilmer Zone 2. And the reason I did this is that if we're going to create a school within a school, let's keep the same concept. The concept being keeping neighborhood kids together. So if we can load Kilmer 1 with kids from this neighborhood and Kilmer 2 with kids from this neighborhood, they keep that neighborhood identity. And I think that's tremendously important. Next slide, please. Okay, 7-8 proposed attendance zones. So we have 3. Okay, we have Dunn, and their population has been, I thought their population was somewhere around 900 this year. Well, it's going to be significantly lower in this scenario, because remember, first we're eliminating a grade, and we're sharing, and we've opened up West Trenton High School. So we have 3 intermediate school attendance zones. The salmon colored one, or the pink one, is West Trenton. The green is Hedgepeth Williams, which, keep in mind, will still be a split school. It's going to have an intermediate school component in it, and then Grace Dunn. So those are the 3 zones, and opening up West Trenton as a middle school certainly has taken lowering the middle schools by 1 grade and opening up West Trenton has taken the pressure off grade 7 and 8. So I think we're good there, and we'll keep testing it. Last slide, next slide, please. So moving forward, okay. Well, you know, we want to meet with the directors of special education and bilingual programs to look at appropriate placement. Okay, there's going to be an analysis of staffing needs, both instructional and administrative, and that has to include costs. In other words, when we shake this whole thing down, are we going to need additional teachers? We know we're going to need at least 3 administrators for the 3 or 4 administrators for the split schools. So we need to know what that will be. Next bullet is I will do an analysis of transportation requirements. I suspect that they're going to be cut, that there's going to be less cost of transportation, but I don't know that for a fact yet. I don't know if it stays the same, if it gets reduced, or if it's a little higher. I suspect it's either stays the same or gets a little bit lower. So I will be doing that analysis as we move along. We need to take care of facility needs in terms of changing organizational structures were indicated. For some of these schools, there have to be some changes, even if it's as simple as getting larger furniture, if a school is accommodating more children than it did before, or if there are other factors that may have to go into effect in some of these schools in terms of lavatories, access to lavatories, that kind of a thing. But again, that's something that needs to be considered once this is adopted, if it's adopted or approved by the board. I believe that Mr. Yano has already scheduled some public forums, town hall meetings, whatever we want to call them, where we can make the same kind of presentation to the community to get community input. And sometimes you'll hear something in the community and you say, geez, I never thought of that. And you may make a tweak here, you may make a tweak there, you may something along those lines, or hopefully everybody loves it and is on board, and we'll see about that. Okay, then now this is critical, because one of the questions that I've been asked is this doable for September? At this particular point, I think I'm sure it is, with a lot of hard work and with us all rolling up our sleeves, but it's critical that the board make a decision by mid-February for a September rollout. There are lots of things that need to be done between February and the opening of school. And working backwards, we want to make sure that we're able to inform the community by April to what school they're zoned for, so they can start making whatever plans they need to make, if they need to make plans in terms of childcare, whatever that kind of thing, whatever this attendance zone does, it's going to impact people. And we need to give them, we can tell them it's to the advantage of their children. We can tell them that that it's going to educationally improve instruction for our children. It's going to offer more opportunities. It's going to create a better learning environment, less crowded schools. But there's also, as we've seen in the pandemic, people who are really hurt by kids not going to school because of things like childcare and having to go to work and those kinds of things. So we need to give people in the community a time to adjust. And I would think that by mid-April, we should be able to say, these are the attendance zones. If you live here and your child is a 3rd grader, this is the school that the child is assigned to. If you live here and you've got a special needs child, the program is available in X school. If your child is a bilingual 3rd grader, they can go to the home school, or they may not be able to. So it's important we do that. In order to do that properly, we need the development of a new street directory, okay, for the new attendance zone, and I would include individual maps. But this process is labor intense. We would do it would take about 4 weeks, give or take a week. And what we do with that is I then take all of these maps, these attendance zone maps, and we drive Trenton to make sure that the endpoints for all of the streets are correct. That if a street ends at, at 2, that it's on the appropriate side of the street if the line for the boundary it bisects that street. So I have about 90 to 95% confidence in the maps that I'm using now. but those 5% could really screw up 100 kids. So we want to make sure that we're not doing that, that we've got that by April, there'll be a directory available. People will be able to call up the schools or do it and say, I live at 27 Ferry Street, and I see by the book, I'm in your school, is that true? They say, yes, the child comes in and registers, okay? And as I said, the last one is notification to parents of new school assignments. And when I said prior to roll-up and registration, April may be, we can do, I can do in my system, and you can do, I believe you can do in your system, we could do a tentative roll-up of children to say, okay, we may not have the kindergarten kids registered, but we can go 1 through 12 to see who goes where, what school, how that's changed the numbers and that kind of a thing. So there's a lot of work ahead, again, going forward with this thing. Again, I just can't tell you how much I appreciate the help I got through this whole project. And I'm certainly open to questions.
So I have one question. When I read through your presentation last week, I believe, I got it to review. I felt really good about it. And the thing that kind of jazzed me was the fact that we're reducing class size so significantly. But I guess the question for me, you were just talking about whether we could accomplish this effectively and efficiently by September. And so I guess the elephant in the room for me is what is the potential disadvantage for not doing this now and waiting a year?
Well, the disadvantage of waiting is the fact that we enter next year with the same situation that we have. We enter next year with the overcrowded schools. We enter next year with kids, going to schools outside of the neighborhood. We maintain the same transportation situation. And I think, to me, the biggest thing is that it maintains the inequity. I mean, just in a very simple level, okay? One school may have an average class size of 24 and another one 19. That's just not fair.
Yeah,
and the sooner we address that, the better. And and I'm not saying it's going to be easy to get it for September, but I think it's necessary.
Okay. All right, good. I mean, I felt really good about it, but that question wasn't answered in the presentation, so I wanted to ask it. Okay.
I appreciate the question.
Okay, board members, any other questions?
Yes, Trueheart speaking. Just have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I was actually unable to make the presentation last week, but I'm happy to hear the presentation today. And I think it's worthwhile and necessary that the district moves in this direction. One of the things that I do want to ask, piggyback, and this is the same thoughts that I had that Gina asked about the phasing in or actually getting started in September. My father used to always say this to me. He would say, your eyes are bigger than your stomach, biting off more than you can chew. And with COVID-19 and our redistricting with COVID-19, and we currently we're going to hybrid next year. We don't know what the anticipation is for the virus going forward. And I know you factored that into your overall thoughts in the process of this. So I'm a little apprehensive about our success in moving this forward in September with all the other moving parts that we have in our district to take care of beginning in September of this coming year, which would be September 21. So could you reiterate for me possibly phasing this in over a 2-year period? Is that something that can be done?
Can it be done? Anything could be done. I've not given a lot. I talked a little bit about a phase-in, but I think it's almost, I would have to kind of take a look and see what the implications of a phase-in are. Because remember, every school is the motion is, it takes into account everything. I think the best example, I said this to Kelly about a week ago, if you ever let your garage become such a mess that you just keep trying to reorganize it until one day you just say, just gotta get everything out of there and start over again, you know, because the organization, to get that organization proper. And I think that I respect what everyone's saying. Yes, there is some trepidation about, you know, in this time frame, but I think the risk is worth the reward. You know, and I anticipate success for the school district in this. I really, really do. And I think that the authorization, when the authorization comes, as we're starting to do this, nothing is final until we put it out in the community. And I think that by April, we should know if this is going to be a go. The worst case scenario is we just put it off for a year. You know, but you know, I mean, I don't want to go to June or July and say, hey, this is a mess. And I'm not anticipating that, okay? But to get started is a tremendous amount of work. And any work we do now is applicable to any point in the future. But again, I'm optimistic about September. I really am. Again, if we keep a very tight timeline and everything is done exactly the way it's supposed to be done, and the data is done the way it's supposed to be done, and the street directory is developed, and the agreement of the community is there. As I said, professionally, I'm optimistic about it. I wouldn't be if this were March. I wouldn't be if this were April. But it is the beginning of January. And the other piece too is we're working on it at a point where, how can I say this? This is a terrible tragedy we're living. Okay, no one can deny that. It's about as bad as anything get. On the same token, though, people do have time to work on this. A little more time than when you're running around in your school buildings and all of those different kinds of things. So if there's any light at the end of the tunnel in terms of this particular project, is that I think we can get people to work on it.
I mean, I certainly agree with you about, you know, making all hands on deck and making sure that we get started on this project for September. I'm just with everything going on, and also this capacity issue, I think that I have, not necessarily with the ability of our administration, but with the capacity of all the other projects that are on their plates right now. Again, you know, it's your eyes are bigger than your stomach kind of scenario or analogy that I see here. I would love to see this approved. I'm not quite there 100% yet on saying yes. I'm saying yes to the proposal that is necessary. I'm not so comfortable yet with saying yes to a September start. The other question I have is, I think the question I want to drive here is transitions, right? So right now we have I believe we have three transitions. We have a K-5, that's one transition. 6-8 is another. Then the 9th grade academy, and then the high school. So it's about 3 transitions in there. Is that correct?
Yeah.
We'd be moving to a 4th transition with the new grade span redistribution configuration. It'd become 4 transitions for our students as we move forward. I just want to make that point that we're moving from a 3 transitions to a 4 transition. We recognize that in transitions there's loss of academic knowledge and so forth for our student growth. And so I just want to make that point. Not that our students aren't capable and our parents aren't there and we don't have the capacity to educate our students once we get to that grade redistribution and configuration of our district in terms of our grade spans. I think we can do that. I'm just want to make that point. The second question I have is to get the overall cost that we're going to need between now and when the budget is due in March. Our budgets are due by statute. There is no movement of when that budget is due. It is due at a specific time. It has to be done, and that's March. So we really don't have until April, May to make a decision. We have to make that decision in terms of how we move forward with September now, within the next 30 days or 45 days. So I think we need to consider that as well. The other thing I want to ask, I know I'm making comments. I'm trying to get your feedback. I want to get your feedback on my comments here. My last comments at this point is I didn't hear much about high school. I heard, our transition to this new grade span configuration K through 8. But I didn't hear much about high school. I didn't hear much about how it impacts 9th grade academy and our 10th at the high school, our Chambers campus, 10th and 11th, 10th through 12th grade, and what impact this has on 9th grade academy, as well as our Chambers Street campus, high school campus. Thank you, Dr. Harper.
So working backwards, okay, from what you say. First of all, in terms of cost, as I'm feeding this, Ms. Howard is actually costing this out. So we'll be working on, right? We'll be working on, like I'll say, no, if we look at a school.
God bless our school business administrator.
Oh, absolutely. She's the money person. But the bottom line is that pretty quickly we can start to look at what staffing needs are. If what school A has 21 sections and needs 21 teachers, and we, in order to do that, we need to hire a couple of teaching staff. We can cost all that out. We can do an overview of what the transportation costs might be. So again, it's attaching staffing needs, transportation needs, and other factors that that we need to bring in your buildings and grounds people to talk about what might have to happen in a school building that might be a cost factor also. So these are not linear. They can all happen at the same time. Okay. In other words, we can walk and chew gum. We can figure out the costs while we're figuring out staffing, while we're figuring out all those different kinds of things. So that's one. There was another one. The last point you made. Oh, high school. The truth is, I haven't touched the high school at this particular point. My assumption is because everybody filters into one place, whether it's the 9th grade academy or the high school or those programs. We're limited in terms that we're not concentrating on opening up the high school. And the high school is growing, so there could be issues there down the road. But because the high school is a single zone, it's one zone for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade children all live in the same zone. Okay, there's just one zone for 9 through 12. So there was really nothing to do with redistricting, but we might want to take a look at space issues down the road on that one. And then the last point you made, and I think it's a great point about transitions, that we've got what I said earlier, okay, is that we, even though school attendance zone may not necessarily be where the kids live, we're keeping the neighborhoods intact. And what I think the effort has to be is that when children are transitioning from the K3 into the 4-5, where they're transitioning from the K3 to the 4-5-6, that we try and get a structure, a structure where kids are not split helter-skelter, but they're split in large groups. So they're going to the same school with their peers. It may not be possible to do it 100%, but we can certainly do it where we keep maybe 30, 40, 30% of the kids. So if you're in, I don't know, if you're in King, maybe everybody in King goes to Kilmer, so that they're together in grades K through 5 at least, or K through 6 at least. There's a lot of math involved with that, and a lot of structure, but I think we can work out paths that keep as many kids as possible together, and we would never want to isolate 10 or 12 or 13 kids alone. So I think that's a great issue. I don't like transitions either. I mean, in the best of all possible worlds, a K5, 6, 8, 9, 12 keeps kids together the most, and a K8, 9, 12 keeps them together, all together. But again, they're not doable kinds of things. So I think that you identified a problem and an issue, but I think it's one to be worked on and one that can be solved. Okay, the overriding thing here is capacity and space and program equity, and I think all of the other issues can be worked out.
And if I could, just to respond to the high school comment, we shared with the board in the meetings that we did over the weekends, that we are expanding both Trenton Central High School and Ninth Grade Academy. So those changes will allow for additional students to attend those schools as well. But as Ross said, this project didn't involve any high school analysis.
Right, so Dr. Harper, does he have those numbers to factor in?
Oh, of course, he has been in they're part of the projection.
Wait a minute, the capacity of the new, not new, but the additions of the high school and the alterations we're doing with the Ninth Grade Academy in terms of the space that we have there. It sounded to me like you said he doesn't know about that yet. And that hasn't been factored in yet, but we have the space. So does he need to have that information in order to scope that out to make sure that, I mean, I know that's, you know, he's doing it now. We might as well make sure that we have the capacity we need. If we know that we don't have the capacity, we know that now. We can also plan for that over the next couple of years.
Kelly, Jen, we can talk about that.
Yeah,
we can talk. Yeah, it's not, I know the numbers. I know how many 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, 12th graders. I know what the projections are for those schools. So we can just attach them to the capacities. Again, that's not a redistricting issue, that's a facility issue.
Right.
Right, and just to add on to that, I think that's something that the district is also factoring in terms of some of the plans for facilities for the next few years. I know that there's a large amount of space, and I think this was just mentioned, that was being developed in the 9th Grade Academy, so that additional classrooms will be set up in the 9th Grade Academy. There are also the former boiler area in the high school, the main campus area, is being redeveloped to house about, I think it's 18 classrooms or something of that nature. So we are expanding our actual facilities capacity at the high school level in case there is an increased need for high school instruction. So I think that's already being factored into that particular equation. And so someone from the district, Mr. Yano, is that a correct assessment in terms of our expanding our high school space?
Absolutely. At the main campus, though, it's not 18 classrooms. I think it's closer to 12.
Okay.
Ms. Howard, is that correct? It's 12, I believe, right?
Yes, it's 12. And if you will look on the agenda tonight, we have the 2 construction companies that will be renovating in 9th Grade Academy and the boiler room at Trenton Central High School, Maine.
And how many classrooms do we expect to get out of 9th Grade Academy expansion?
9th Grade Academy will have between 11 and 12 classrooms, and we're also building our boys and girls locker room. And Maine will have around 12 classrooms and 2 science labs. So with that, we did pretty touch on that with Ross, and we do know that Trenton Catholic is closing. So we did talk to him about that, but this focus was K through 8th grade. And then we'll talk about the others, because that's not really, as Ross said, really that much of a capacity issue like the K through 8th grade was.
Okay. I have Gerald, are you good now?
I'm gonna yield to you and others. I have some other questions, but I'm taking a lot of time here. And I apologize to my fellow board members for not being able to make that call as we met with, as you guys did, met with Dr. Harper and others around this issue. And maybe that's why all these questions maybe I could have gotten answered. So I apologize for not making that meeting, but I think it's important that I do ask these questions now as we move forward. And so I do have more questions, but I want to yield my time. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And so certainly you can still have an opportunity to ask those, because we can certainly get you responses. So if you're like me, sometimes I need to write my things down on the side and make sure that I can actually get them answered. And so I would just like
to do one more when you finish. I got one more important one I think I want to ask. So if you want me to do that now, or should I wait till you finish?
Go ahead.
Okay. This is my last one. I think this is an important point, at least in my mind, as I think through this process, Dr. Harper and board and administration, is if we have a timeline, here's a scenario. If we set a timeline that says for a September start for this redistricting and race band reconfiguration, and quite frankly, we've been through 2 of the last 6 years, so that's also a little brings a little anxiety to me as well. We've been through 2 grade reconfigurations in the last 6 years. But if we have these timelines and objective set due dates of things that we have to accomplish in order to meet that September deadline, and in fact, if we pass the due date and don't make that due date, will that automatically at that point then say, you know what, we're not ready for September. We need to push this out to September 2022, or have a plan to phase it in so that we can meet the requirements of the increase in enrollment. So I mean, that's you know what I mean? You hear what I'm saying?
No, that's a great.
And also, the other part of that question is that we don't know right now what the community wants. I know they will want, hey, class size reductions, more teachers, more administrators. I get that. I think that's important, and more strengthening bilingual, strengthening our special ed population programs. And I think it's good, but we don't know at this point what those conversations and what that feedback will be. Not only necessary from our parents, definitely from our parents, most important, but just as important from our teachers and staff and other support staff in the district that have a say in this whole process.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in really quickly. This is Tehran, and Dr. Harbour, you can probably answer this in conjunction with Gerald's question, because it's along the same line of questioning in regards to timing. And, I can myself say that I do support this plan. However, I'm very hesitant about the timing of September. So it goes to Gerald's questions about the timing and prioritization.
Okay, I think, well, let me start off by saying this, okay?
In terms of priority, does this have to be the number one priority of our leadership team at the moment to get this done in September? And if your answer is, if your answer is yes, kind of want to walk through that a little bit, because for me, the number one priority for us should be our reopening, right? And transitioning our students back, looking at how we're going to catch our students up, analyzing the potential delays and things of that sort. So if the reorganization has to be priority, I'm just gonna let you answer that question in conjunction with Gerald's question about prioritizing and what that looks like in the scheme of everything else that's happening.
Me? Yeah. Well, I think that an initial deadline that was set, okay, was mid-February, okay, and Sienna, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you say we've got community forums already set up?
Right. Yes, we have them set up. They're on the calendar. We're going to be advertising them next week.
Okay.
And, yes.
So the first milestone will be board approval. From that board approval, okay, first of all, let's start. We want to get feedback from those community forums. That's the first thing, okay? Because we want to know where the community stands on this kind of thing. So I think that's important. And I think if we put all of this stuff into the mixer, feedback from the community forum, certainly you guys getting together and talking this through and, really taking some time to think about what your concerns are, and even asking me the question, can we do this by this date? Can we do this by this date? And the only thing I can really promise you, if no matter what the circumstance, if I feel that it can't be done, I will tell you, stop. I mean, as the consultant that you've hired, I won't lead you down a path. So you expressed a lot of great concerns tonight. Keep in mind, by the way, I'm only an email away. So, and certainly you've got everybody else in the administrative staff to communicate your concerns to me. So first milestone is the board meeting. We put together all the concerns, the pros and cons that come from the community. And then if we moving forward, I could tell you this, I could set out a timeline that this needs to be done by this date, this needs to be done by this date, this needs to be done by this date, and just what my experience has showed me in terms of how much time everything takes. If I need four to 5 weeks to do the street guide, I'd like to start that the day after the board approval. So, listen, your concerns are absolutely valid, and I absolutely respect them. the decision is the decision you guys have to make is taking your concerns and saying, listen, I'm worried about it not being done for September. Maybe we need to take a year and a half and do this later on. On the other side of the coin, you say, do we want to keep, do you want to keep things as they are? Okay. Or is it time to make the change now? As I said to you, my professional opinion is that you can do it, but it shouldn't be done if you've got a lot of trepidations.
The elephant in the room is COVID. We don't know where we're going to be in September.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so
What is
many.
the-
Hold on, one at a time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt?
Yeah.
No, Yolanda was getting ready to start, so that's why I said, if you finish, then Yolanda can
Oh, no,
start.
go ahead, Yolanda. I talked enough. Go ahead.
No, it was Saran before me, actually.
Okay, Tehran, I'm sorry. Tehran and then Yolanda.
I know, I just kind of wanted to follow up on my question. And I guess very directly, Dr. Harbour, with your experience, does a leadership team, does a district need to focus as a priority their entire attention to this initiative to get this done in September?
Can I answer that question first? Anyway, okay. It seems to me from what you're saying, your concern about a very valid one about transitioning back from remote to in school or to some hybrid, and that's going to take a lot of energy to do that. By the same token, is there any reason why, I'm not sure why both can't be done. Okay, that's where I'm kind of on the fence. Why can't we do both? There are certain steps that you need to take to reopen the schools. Now, are you concerned that reopening the schools and this project could be in conflict, cause confusion, that kind of thing?
No, go ahead, Daddy.
No, Tehran, I was just going to say, and then just hold that thought. I think that's a question, that's a district kind of question in terms of what is our capacity? And that goes back to Gerald's original question, right? And so what is the capacity in terms of, the eyes and the stomach and so on and so forth? Like, there's a lot going on. And can we plan? And here's the question: your eyes are too big for your stomach, or something like that. Can we divide up our staff in terms of our district staff so that the functions of those things that need to be done, the things that need to be done for, let's just say, reopening, are done by these 5 individuals, and I'm just making this up, right? And then the planning for the reorganization of schools, the grade configurations, that's done by these 5 individuals, and they all have their tasks laid out by a timeline that says these 5 people are responsible for these things by this time, working on reopening. These 5 people are responsible for these particular items that are dealing with the reorganization of schools. So do we have the capacity to make sure that we can divide our staff and make sure that both areas are taken care of simultaneously? And I guess the question comes up because we've had some challenges in the past.
Amen.
I mean, I have full faith and confidence in the folks that work for the district, but we've had challenges in the past, right? Can we do this? Can we lay it out on paper? And again, it's more of a district question more so than a you question, Dr. Haber. Can we as a district say that we can plot this all out, assign this to certain people responsible for X, Y, Z, P, and Q. The other half are responsible for A, B, C, D, and E, and make it all work and deliver it by September, and everybody on task and have it all done. I think that's the primary question, without shooting ourselves in the foot and creating a bigger mess, right? Which is what we don't want to do.
Yeah.
So may I respond?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Right. So the work of reopening the district, the vast majority of that work is complete. We were ready to open February 1st. We have our plans in place. Our PPE is in the buildings. Our HVAC systems have been upgraded. Every principal has their pandemic plan ready to go. We have our kids sorted into their cohorts. We have everything ready to go. So the lift for reopening is really the only reason we didn't reopen is because of the health considerations in the city, right? As soon as the infection rate drops to an acceptable level, we're going to reopen our schools. So the work, the lift, for the next couple months, we're not going to have that operational side of working with kids coming into the buildings, health checks, arrivals, dismissals. So I believe confidently, and this team has been working on this since last March and through the summer, and really preparing. You saw the presentation from Mr. Mosley last month on the work that's been done. He's been reporting on the completion rates, the distribution of air purifiers in our buildings, the upgrades to some of the infrastructure. So that's a different type of work, though. That's sitting in a department like a physical operational buildings and grounds, custodians, maintenance workers on those types of activities. Principals are handling the details of their day-to-day operations. That's been done, organized, ready to go. Schedules are in the system. We're not changing anything in our school management system. We're not changing the way we're grading. Kids will show up. We will have some challenges in terms of like the instructional aspect of the program. Mr. Toft and his team, they're preparing a revised look at how instruction will be processed. But I'm confident that we're 100% ready for that aspect of it. The actual redistricting part, Ross did all the hard work. He did all the work of identifying the school zones, identifying the flow of kids, and how they are going to be distributed across the city, and connecting K3s to 4-6s to 7-8s. Now the work for us becomes to operationalize that piece with a street directory, a communication plan for families to communicate where kids will go. We have Special Assistant Dave Valeri in charge of making sure kids are pointed in our system so that we know exactly, if you live at this address, you're going to this next school for next year. It's a process that we know how to handle because we do it every year when we point students from elementary to middle school. So I believe, we have the correct structure right now to be able to roll this out. Yes, it is going to be a big job, but it can happen concurrently with the other activities that we're doing. For the next 3 months, we're going to be remote. So we're not dealing with the day-to-day operational aspects of opening schools, dealing with discipline, dealing with late buses, food service not arriving on time, whatever it may be, right? So like we've really lifted a lot of those critical areas of pressure points. So I'm confident with the board's approval, of course, and additional questions that we have to look at, that we will be able to make this lift happen. And early on, let parents know, because school zones need to be set so we know where to register kindergartners, right? Because kindergartners need to be registered.
No, and I appreciate, yeah. I'm sorry, and I appreciate that. I do understand that there's definitely a plan in terms of infrastructure and meeting health and safety standards. But I'm thinking, my idea of reopening goes really beyond that. It goes beyond the facilities and things that we've done to make sure that we are appropriately avoiding the spread. But I'm not going to beat that dead horse because we can definitely talk about that in other discussions. But the reopening definitely goes beyond that, right? And we all know that. So that's where my concern lies. And I do agree with you, Addie. It is a capacity issue. And yes, definitely have faith in our leaders so they can get stuff done. However, I think that there's so much more and there's so many unknowns and so much pressure right now on teachers, administrators, programming, the curriculum, just thinking through how to transition kids back to school with a lot of trauma that's been happening, with just engaging them back in technology, engaging them back in school, period. I just want to make sure that that's not overshadowed, right? And it's not, the reopening isn't simply looked at for health and safety purposes. So that's my larger issue. Right. But again, we can have ongoing discussions, hear from the public and our, parents and students, and keep thinking through that.
Right. So yeah, when we get to reopen those schools, right? Those first few weeks, will be almost as like an orientation. Like, what does school look like? What does it feel like? How do we behave? How do we get along? How do we socially distance? So you're going to see a lot on the social emotional side. So I don't want to act as if we're just opening the doors and instruction continues where we left it off in March. That's not the case. We have a lot of recovery, a lot of relationship building that has to happen to help us be successful for a September start, regardless of what format we're using, whether it's a K3 or a K5. But the K3 format, smaller school size, smaller classrooms. Those are all ways to address the learning loss that's occurred in the last year, right? If we go back to oversized classrooms and kids coming from across the city, it's going to kind of add on to the challenge. But so I see the proposal as one method of and one strategy to help increase the amount of time we're spending with students in that early childhood zone, K3, in that intermediate elementary zone, 4-6, with some opportunities to departmentalize and really do some structured learning activities there. So I just wanted to add that piece, that we're not ignoring the social emotional aspect, because that we know that is going to be a massive lift and a welcome re-engagement with our students to make sure that everyone's feeling good and connected again and making healthy relationships.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to, I'm not sure who I'm hearing right this minute, but I know Yolanda had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then I'd kind of like to wrap this up so that we can move forward. And there's another piece to this, the town hall, so that we hear the voices of the community and other folks involved. And so, you know, again, I'm going to hear from Yolanda, Jean, and then I'm going to wrap this up, and we're going to move on to public participation and continue this discussion in a slightly different forum, right? So Yolanda?
I was actually going to touch on some of the points that our superintendent just touched on. And it's that I believe that it would really help in as far as the learning for our children is concerned, because we will have smaller communities. There will be less likelihood of them to continue losing on their learning. So I really think that smaller, you know, just condensing those grades and having, even if it's 2 schools in one building, there's going to be an administrator for each school. There'll be hopefully smaller classes, more teachers, and that's going to really help on the what's fundamental in their learning, because a lot of the learning loss we've seen really comes at 3rd grade. Once they leave 3rd grade, that's when if they've had that loss, it's really hard to retain. So if we just kind of keep those schools smaller, and then if they go into 4th and 5th, you know, there's just a less likelihood of them continuing to lose, because I kind of see it like it being tightened up. And then as far as the COVID, I was going to say the same thing, that I think that this is the time to really be able to take advantage of the fact that we have our kids in school right now. And even, you know, if we can plan it, if it can happen, well, it can happen. But I don't think we should just stop and say, well, no, it's not possible. I think it is possible, but I do believe that we should also have leeway to say, you know what, this is not a good idea. Let's stop it right here. But I think we should push forward with it. I would like to think a little bit more on it, but I am more on the side that we should go for it. And I thank you for
I don't.
Okay, hold on, Teron.
I'm sorry, Eddie. I just don't.
For September.
Hold on. Let Yolanda finish.
Yeah, I was going to say, go on.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Yolanda. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. It was just
Got it.
that,
I just don't want to be misrepresented that I'm not in favor of this plan. That's not the intention at all. I hope I was very clear on what my
right. You have questions.
My thoughts are, but in terms of not agreeing to the plan, that's not the case at all, and I don't want it misrepresented that way. Thank you.
No.
Gotcha. You have questions, Jean.
Yeah. So I guess my question is going back to one of the slides where it was an actual demonstration of growth. So if we look at if we look at the growth that we've gone over time this year, can we make the assumption, Dr. Haber, that if we don't change a thing, that reality continues to compound? Because I think there were schools like, what was it, Martin Luther King Jr. Did I see a 60% number up there over time? So that means that we're going to have even more children potentially going into those schools. And so, you know, I can't recall the numbers, but the growth rate of attendance with new students coming in some schools was small, but in some schools that are already overcrowded, it's going to be even more. overcrowded. So I just, that's just my my concerns. But I think the feedback from parents are going to be very critical here. And so I'm looking forward. How soon are those meetings going to take place for the superintendent?
Alfonso?
The first week of February. It was on one of my slides. I'll send you the slides so you see like the routine they're going to go through. We'll have multiple meetings. We're planning on doing family meetings and also faculty meetings. And I would like to add just one more piece, Gene, to the question. We want to hear from parents, right? But don't forget that the strategic planning process, meetings 1, 2, and 3 last year, were all events where we got parents to provide their feedback. And focus area number 5 is all about facilities, infrastructure, resources, safety, and security. And in the common themes, challenges, and strengths and achievements, you see the theme of transportation, exclusion, segregation of programs, overcrowding class sizes, not having access to programs. So there was a large voice of the parents that we heard through the strategic planning process that is hinting at those areas. And again, we will talk about it at these family meetings as we go forward to collect the evidence. But we do have some evidence from last year and this year that pointed towards the community and these, our families, our parents, feeling that they needed better access to programs.
Don't forget, we need to hear the voice of our teachers, our administrators, and our support staff in this process as well. They are just as important as our parents and our children who are attending our school. So let's not lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So hold on. So Gerald, I think some of those conversations have actually begun to get some initial feedback from our staff. I'm not sure how far we've gone with those conversations, but could someone, Mr. Superintendent, shed a little light on the conversations that have begun to take place?
Right. So an overview, a high-level overview of the redistricting and enrollment projections was completed with each of the different associations. They received, a kind of an overview of what the proposal was. Of course, emphasis was made on the board has to vote on this to move it forward, right? In addition, we've had meetings with parents on the reopening plan, and next is specific meetings with family and staff on this exact program. So that teacher feedback couldn't happen until you received this report tonight, because it would have been inappropriate to kind of jump ahead of that line. So now that you've received the official proposal, it's out in the community. We had about 150 people viewing the presentation on YouTube. I'm not sure how many were on Facebook. So we had a wide audience viewing the presentation tonight, along with our administrators and teaching staff. So the next step, within the next 2 weeks, we will be going out and collecting that information directly from our staff, which includes, when I say staff, I mean, faculties, is administrators, paraprofessionals, our school secretaries, and our teachers.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yolanda, I said that, but I'm going to let you go ahead. And like I said, we got to wrap this up.
No, it's just a quick question. Can we just accept the recommendations and have a special meeting after, we have some more feedback from the teachers and parents, and then vote on whether we want to do this for September or not?
Okay. I'm going to ask Alfonso that question because I know, our superintendent, Mr. Yano, because I know that we had been discussing, depending upon the feedback that we received from various community groups and our other constituent groups or stakeholders, that there might be a special meeting to actually accept and move forward with the recommendation, because there's a lot of implications for budget here.
Absolutely.
And so I know we were having that particular discussion, and I'm not sure in terms of what we were actually doing tonight. I know we were receiving the report. Go ahead.
So tonight you're receiving the report, you're accepting the report that was provided to you. You're not making a decision on any of the recommendations. You received it. Now we'll go, after tonight, we'll go into a discovery phase where you'll come up with questions, you'll pose them to Ms. Harrow, Ms. Creek, and myself, Dr. Haber. We'll respond in writing. February 8th, we were projecting as a special board meeting to vote on this specific topic, because by February 22nd, Ms. Howard and her team have to deliver the completed budget to the county office. So the big lift right now is on the budget office side. They are, cranking out the numbers. They're looking at the configurations and doing all this and all of the configurations around the budgeting aspect of it. But timeline tonight, accept the report. February 8th is the actual decision making, if the board so chooses to have that special meeting. But I believe we need to have that meeting to decide and approve Ms. Howard's team to actually finalize the budget, which has to be submitted and approved on February 22nd. So the timeline is very tight for that piece.
Okay, all right. So thank you for that very rich discussion. And I will say for myself, what would be helpful to me, and it may be a number of the other board members as well, while we're having these conversations and we're planning, if we could see, as Gerald stated, this whole idea of the timeline and what are the expectations, what are the due dates, who's responsible, and so on and so forth, and how we actually plot that out in terms of an overall plan of action. I think we feel a little bit more comfortable in terms of making a decision and saying that, certainly we can go forward if we know what it's going to look like, how it's going to be rolled out, who's going to be responsible for doing X, Y, Z, P, and Q, so that it can actually take place, or we know what the decision points are where we need to go either forward, and certainly we don't want to go backward. So again, that would be helpful for me. All right, so with that said, if there are no further questions, and hopefully there are not at this time, I'd like to move us into public participation. I'm sorry, Mr. Haber, final point?
No, I just want to thank you all for a really great discussion. And I'm only an email away. And Kelly, I'll call you tomorrow morning, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Okay.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that information with us. Certainly very detailed, and certainly a lot to think about and a lot to process.
Sure.
And so at this time, as I said, I'd like to move us into public participation. And I certainly appreciate the public's patience with us tonight. Hopefully the information that you heard was very valuable to you in terms of your thinking about what's going on in the district and what role you may or may not play in what's going on or what's being proposed for the district. So at this point, we have a number of persons who have signed up to speak, and I'm going to start with a reminder. You have 5 minutes for your commentary, and we'll start tonight with public participation with Ms. Paula Bethea. Unmute yourself, Ms. Bethea.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone see me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, TBOE board members, Superintendent Yano, members of the district leadership team, TPS educators, and community stakeholders. My name is Paula Bethea, and I am the principal of Joyce Kilmer School. This evening, I'm here to share with the community about the work of my colleagues from the middle schools and Tanga and our partnership with the College of New Jersey, more specifically, the Middle School Advisory Committee, and the awesome work that was done to address the social and emotional needs of our community. On December 9th, we hosted a professional learning workshop centered around trauma-informed education. The school leadership and staff members from our 4 middle schools, Dunn Middle, Hudspeth Williams Middle School of the Arts, Rivera Community School, as well as Trenton 9th Grade Academy. The program was held in collaboration with the Office of Professional Development and the Supervisor of Counselors. We all planned and participated in a very informative and enlightening program, which included topics related to youth trauma, violence, the use and non-use of cameras during virtual learning, and community resources available in the city for our schools and families. The ultimate goal was that for all of us to have a better understanding and discuss how trauma affects our students and how to best support our staff. The presenters also included TCNJ staff, community stakeholders, and district staff. Over the course of the pandemic, as part of the committee, we all discussed the importance of supporting our families and the impact that this experience has had on their daily lives. We often have much to say about what we're not doing in Trenton Public Schools to address social and emotional needs. So I felt it prudent that we share the hard work that we're doing on behalf of our precious children. We definitely hope and plan to continue this discussion and perhaps have it more district-wide to support our wider community on behalf of our children and our staff. We thank the College of New Jersey and the Middle School Advisory Committee for its commitment to the Trenton Public Schools. What began as a partnership with one school, Kilmer, eventually led to an entire college department dedicated to urban education. An annual fully sponsored career and annual college day, of which 8th graders from every middle school were able to visit and learn more about the life of a college student, as well as the ability to host hundreds of future teachers in our schools as student teachers. A true district and college collaboration. There is also a website dedicated to the Middle School Advisory Committee that has been launched, which we can share with our district leadership team for further review. It includes information about the work we have done this far and the videos from the Trauma-Informed PD held on December 9th, so many more can access the workshops and information on a wider district scale. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me share, as well as have the overall goal of what's doing best to support our staff and students. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Addie, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you. All right, Ms. Joan Yoon, would you unmute yourself? And thank you, Ms. Bethea, for sharing.
Thank you, board members and the superintendents for this opportunity to share my concern. My purpose is to start a conversation for productive and collaborative actions to ensure the successful outcome of our students. My name is Joan Yoon. I am a science teacher at the 9th grade academy. Each Danielson evaluation component does have rubrics specific to teaching performance. However, these rubrics are still too general when used to evaluate teachers. What may be the best teaching practices in language art classes may not be relevant in science classes due to the content differences. I, as the classroom teacher, may be confronted with students' difficulty with their understanding of the physics formulas because of students' misinterpretations of the formulas. Their misinterpretations may derive from their lack of exposures to the topic. I can share one example when students strive to understand the relationship between surface frictions and moving objects. From this concept, they struggle to make connections between real-life situations and the formula for calculating the relationship between surface friction and movement. There are many reasons for their struggles. Their interpretations of the concept are complex, and it is my job to find out how they're interpreting and guide them to the right context for accurate understanding on the topic. The concept may be common sense to us adults, but each student being so different, each pupil has his or her own interpretation. Also, their developmental stage plays the role. This is the type of challenge I'm experiencing in understanding my students' cognitive activities. I realize that this type of challenge is not well understood and recognized by my evaluators. I come to be aware of this miscommunication every time I engage in discussions with them. My evaluators look for specifics that they find are the best practices, and that may be true. However, my class is a whole different learning culture due to necessary engineering that goes with students' success in comprehension. My students' learning challenges may come from their inadequate past learning related to the content and students' personal experiences. What I know to be effective may appear irrelevant to my evaluators because they did not experience the challenges I have been faced with. Today, we are witnessing the anti-science movements while the pandemic is still raging. There are too many people protesting against masking, and some believe the pandemic is a big lie, while more than 400,000 people lost their lives as a result of the infection. There is this urgency to educate our students in science effectively. In addition, there is this threatening urgency with the climate crisis, and too many politicians in high-ranking positions choose to ignore this reality. We are threatened with the climate extremes evident by frequent flooding, unusually strong hurricanes, and extreme droughts, leading to mass migrations and damages to nature's ecosystem. These so-called highly educated policymakers are brushing them off as if these events are normal, but the record shows that these events are way too frequent and extreme compared to the past record since 1000 years AD. The purpose of my presentation today is this. I am trying to bring awareness on the importance of how students' mental connections have to be made with science concepts in the face of pervasive ignorance of science in the threats of climate change deniers and increased chance of another impending pandemic. It is urgent we strive to ensure that all of our students make connections to science concepts so they can be the responsible stewards of the earth. So I'm making this request to the Trenton district and families to allow me to do the job I'm hired to do. I have been spending hours researching and investigating credible methodologies with positive students' learning outcomes. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Yoon. All right, now that we've heard from Ms. Yoon, we're going to move on to Ms. Jillian Osceola. Ms. Jillian Osceola. Okay, I don't see her. So I'll move on and I'll come back if she reappears. The next person is Mr. David Lerner. Mr. Lerner.
Hi, good evening. My name is David Lerner, and I'm a music teacher at Kilmer School, as well as the assistant director for the 6 to 12 district-wide marching band. I'm speaking to you this evening in hopes that the board can help me with a swift resolution to a problem that arose last school year. Last school year, my supervisor, Norberto Diaz, was placed on administrative leave at the end of September. Mr. Diaz is in charge of placing my name, as well as the other members of the marching band staff, on the board agenda for district approval. Mr. Diaz was placed on leave before he had the opportunity to do so, and should have been handled by Ms. Liz De Jesus in his absence. I alerted the TEA as well as members of central office to this issue in late October. The TEA and central office worked diligently to make the necessary corrections for my colleague, Ted Plunkett, yet somehow forgot to include me, although I am the one who brought the issue to light. I again alerted the TEA as well as central office to the error and was met with avoidance and silence to my inquiries until the February board agenda. I was unable to put in for the hours worked because I was told that I could not get paid for hours before the date of my board approval. I was told there was nothing that could be done. And to this day, when I inquire why my colleague Ted Plunkett was board approved and not me, I am met with silence. I have asked if I can be retroactively board approved, and yet again, I am met with silence. Upon reviewing board minutes from last school year, I see there was a music teacher who last worked in the district almost a decade ago, yet last winter was retroactively retired on the board agenda. If these changes can be made, I'd like to know why I cannot be retroactively board approved for the position I've been working in for the last 7 years. From the students to the staff to central administration, it is widely known that the marching band performed last year from the summer until we shut down for COVID. And there's not one person who would not attest that I was the assistant director. Mr. Diaz has made me aware that he spoke on my behalf on September 30th, 2020 on this issue, and that Superintendent Llano directed Mr. Diaz to work with Inez De Jesus to get me paid in full. Ms. De Jesus forwarded this request to Ms. Sean Mitchell, and we currently stand at an impasse. I humbly ask assistance from the board to have the business office issue my stipend in full. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lerner, so noted. Okay, moving on to the next person, Ms. Marisol Tirado. Ms. Marisol Tirado. Okay, I'm going to move on. And if she reappears, I'll come back to her. Judy Martinez, Ms. Judy Martinez. I see Ms. Martinez.
I'm here.
Okay, there you go. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to begin by addressing some old concerns. But before I do that, I wanted to state for the record that the agenda was not posted to the website until 8 p.m. on Friday, January 22nd. Last month, the board president read some statements addressing some of our concerns from the previous month, and I wanted to clarify some things. When we brought up the lack of response from leadership to Tessa matters, Ms. Lane stated that Tessa needed to be more specific. That leadership is very responsive to all union matters. So let me be more specific. Since I began as the Tessa leadership in November of 2019, we have submitted over 15 grievances and not one has been resolved as of yet. In October, I emailed Ms. Howard and Mr. Rolls for a copy of the Tessa seniority list. No response. I emailed again in November and received a wrong list a week later. I emailed again to correct that error. Until today, no response. Also in November, I emailed the legal department with questions concerning a document an administrator stated she received from the legal department. Till today, I have not received a response to that concern. On January 13th, I emailed Mr. Rolls and Mr. Yano with questions concerning the CARES Act. Yet again, no response from them. When I brought up issues with Tessa was having with the special education department, the director of special education, the district's response was to threaten me with conduct unbecoming of a public employee and stated that I was inappropriate and unprofessional and that my statement was unsubstantiated and false. I do not come here on monthly board meetings for my own sake. I am here as the president of the Secretaries Union, and I will voice my grievances against the district as such. It was true. If it was true that my claims against the director of special education were false, then the special education department would not have so many grievances against them from more than one unit in this district. They would not have so many citations against them with the Department of Education. I heard the district's response to my statement that CST secretaries are team secretaries and not the director secretaries. I did not misunderstand, nor did I misinterpret any language. I leave that to the district to do. What I know is that there are board members here right now that were part of the negotiations for the CST secretaries to return, and those board members agreed to that MOA. It states CST secretaries are team secretaries. Board members should do a little more than be satisfied with a verbal answer from the district. Why don't you ask the legal department for that copy of the MOA and read it for yourselves? We have an arbitration award that was won, and to this date, the district refuses to recognize it. TESA members have been waiting to receive a payout from an arbitration that was won, appealed, and won again. Case number 011600400279. We have been in contact with the legal department on this matter, and we have received a runaround every time. The district has received a court order to pay the secretaries for this arbitration, yet almost 3 years later, they refuse to pay them. I am sure that when the subject is questioned, the legal department will blame the pandemic for the holdup. It amazes me that when it comes to the district doing what they want to do, the pandemic is not an issue. TESA has brought our concerns to the board members, and every time you ask the district for their response, it is the same. There is no issue. And that satisfies the board members. No questions, no investigations, just satisfied with their response. I was under the impression that the district answers to the board members and not the other way around. Just as our unit had to file a complaint to the state against the board for not following its own protocols for COVID-19, TESA has been voicing our objections to the lies the district has been putting out there that all protocols are being followed. I've said it before, it looks great on paper, but they're not being followed in the building. if you would walk through the buildings, if you would visit the buildings, you would all notice that all these things that they keep cheering and saying that are in place are not in place. Those buildings were not ready to be opened in February, regardless of what Mr. Yano says. And finally, the statement to Mr. Yano, as the acting superintendent, you have the right and the ability to decide the outcome of any grievance we submit. You as the superintendent can make those decisions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Okay, I'm going to go back. That was Ms. Martinez. I'm going to go back one more time. Ms. Osceola, Jillian Osceola. No? Okay. Let's see. Then Ms. Tirado.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. I'm Marisol Tirado, TESA Vice President. In November 2020, we met with the board attorney to discuss resolving some of our outstanding grievances. The purpose of the meeting was simple. TESA was very straightforward with what we were proposing and our timeline, considering these were grievances that should have been heard many months prior. The attorney said that he will get back to us the next day. We waited for over 2 months for a response. We received an email on Thursday afternoon, January 21st, which partially addressed a couple grievances and had no mention of others. We are tired of having time-consuming conversations and meetings that are introduced as opportunities to work together and resolve issues, when in fact the purpose is to buy more time and to be able to say there was a conversation in a meeting. And this is why so many issues become grievances that become arbitrations. Meetings for the sake of saying they had meetings, but what actually gets resolved. Now, before you prepare to respond on this issue at the next board meeting, I would suggest you review the legal department's meeting minutes for that meeting and compare it to the email we received, and it will confirm what we were saying. The intentional lack of communication is a big problem in this district. Small issues become big issues because you allow it. We continue to fight cases that have already been won, that have already been to arbitration and won. Even having an MOA on issues with a department like special education doesn't seem to matter. This district has no problem breaking the very agreements you agreed to, breaking the same contracts you negotiated. There seems to be no concern whatsoever in wasting money and time in fighting battles that have already been won. But when it comes to hiring much needed support staff, we consistently hear there is no money in the budget. Last board meeting, I thanked the superintendent for sending emails to all district employees regarding COVID cases and improving communication. I expressed how it helped eliminate chaos and paranoia. I spoke too soon. We became aware of other cases in our school buildings that our members were not made aware of, our members that have been in the very same buildings. Please don't bother to come back next board meeting and state this is not true, because I am one of those members as well, and I never received notification. And to be clear, we understand what HIPAA means. That doesn't explain why we have more than one school with positive cases and our members were not informed. To remind everyone, support staff is still entering and working in these buildings. Why does the lack of structure and consistency not appear to be a concern for you? We sit at the table, agree on things, and then it's back to old business as usual. The purpose should be to resolve, not to give you time to put together excuses when it's mentioned in public. If there is a question I would like answered most at the next meeting, it's this very question. Why are you not concerned that there is a lack of ethical behavior, structure, and consistency in this district? And where is the responsibility? Thank you.
Okay, I thank you, Ms. Tirado. Moving on to our next participant. Our next participant is Mr. Jonathan Davis from the College of New Jersey.
Hi, thank you to the board, to the superintendent, and to the TPS community. My name is Jonathan Davis. I'm a professor of secondary education at the College of New Jersey, and I coordinate our urban secondary education program. And I wanted to come here tonight to echo a lot of the words of Ms. Bethea. Ms. Bethea has been a longstanding partner of mine. It is our partnership that started over 6 years ago that led to the creation of the Middle School Advisory Committee that she mentioned. And I don't want to rehash everything that Ms. Bethea said, but only to add to how important this partnership is to the College of New Jersey, as well as Trenton Public Schools. The Middle School Advisory Committee was developed as a true partnership where we brought together administrators, staff, faculty and staff and community members from TCNJ and Trenton to figure out how we can best support one another. And from that led to the development of mentoring programs at Kilmer and Rivera. It led to the creation of the middle school day, college day that we've hosted at TCNJ that has grown from bringing first just the students at Kilmer and Rivera to campus, which was over 300 students, 8th graders, and the staff to every single 8th grader in Trenton so that they can not just be able to come to a college campus, but see what it meant to be a college student and have TCNJ students as their mentors so that, you know, obviously we would love for them to come to TCNJ, but it's so much more than that of just being able to, one, see that TCNJ, which is right down the road, is a place for the whole community. And it's a space where the students can see themselves. So as they transition into the 9th grade academy and then to the high school, they see that goal of being able to step to a college campus 4 years later as something that's really attainable and that there's support. And our partnership has really, you know, Paula mentioned a lot of the things that we've done that have supported the middle schoolers and the teachers and the staff, but it's really helped us at TCNJ as well, where we have developed a middle school specialization program where this advisory committee helped develop courses and have developed different initiatives. And from that were these collaborative professional developments that we've created and hosted, including this first major one on trauma-informed practice, which was actually in the works 2 years ago and was snowed out and then rescheduled. And we think that it was meant to be because the timing of when we were able to offer it in December was exactly when it needed to happen. And the feedback that we got from this professional development, and I'm sharing the link to the website that Paula referenced, where we have recorded every session from that professional development, where teacher after teacher that I have worked with emailed me saying, this is the best professional development I've ever been a part of. And we see this as a committee, as a space where we can figure out the needs of the TPS community as well as the TCNJ community to see where we can provide support and access all of our resources collaboratively to meet all of our needs. And that's what's so amazing about this partnership, is that we're not working in a silo anymore. We're working in a true collaboration. And our hope is to continue to grow with these partnerships. And I know Mr. Yano already talked about a lot of our other initiatives that we're partnering with TPS and TCNJ, but it really runs the gamut of real practical programs in terms of creating more pipelines of TPS students coming to TCNJ and us preparing more teachers that will work in Trenton schools, which has been a goal of mine since I started. And this is an ongoing process and work that we are fully 100% committed to. And I have to say, in my 6 years of working at TCNJ, the best part of my work has always been my work with the Trenton schools and the teachers and the students. And it's honestly the reason why I took the job. And I am just so thankful to be able to be a part of this community. And I look forward to being able to continue to work with you moving forward. So thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. Thank you for your partnership. Moving on, our next participant, Estella Harris. Estella Harris. Okay, I will hold on to her name for just a second. Moving down, Ms. Talithia Duncan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Talithia Duncan. I'm the president of the Trenton Education Association, and I am here to speak about a few matters this evening. First is the bed bug policy. Gerald, I don't know if you need to pull that and send that back to committee. In the policy, it states that if the district cannot get a licensed pest control management team out to the building within 24 hours, then the custodian will vacuum the room, discard the contents, and whatever. But the issue that we have is the building principal will determine if staff and students are able to occupy the classroom until a licensed pest management professional can certify that the room is cleared of any bed bugs. My question is, why is it up to the principal to determine if it is safe? Are all of our administrators licensed pest management professionals? No, they're not. That means they should not be determining if and when it is safe for students and staff to return to said classroom. You need to send the policy back to the committee and make the necessary adjustments in which the licensed pest management professional is the one making a determination if it is okay for students and staff to return to the space. Second is the platform on which you are streaming the board meetings. Tonight, it was a little bit different. However, the community was not informed of the change in platform that you will be running it on YouTube. My charge to the board is there are several districts in our area that do this and do this very well. We pay a lot of money to Zoom. Zoom can be set up as webinars, whereas people can come and watch the meeting with one click. They don't have to click on Zoom if you're going to speak and then go to YouTube or then go to Facebook and hit Trenton Public Schools. It's one way where you can click one button. We give them a lot of money. Let's put it to use correctly. Finally, I'm going to talk about the superintendent search. I spoke on last meeting about this, and Vice President Tice came back with a response while Kurt did not address our concerns. She also tried to explain the difference between a requirement and a recommendation. That in and of itself was very condescending in nature, seeing as though I am college educated with several degrees up under my belt. Nevertheless, Vice President Tice wants to play semantics. Best practice suggests on how to properly conduct a superintendent search. And once again, we are not using best practices because they are not requirements. Where do they do that at? I'm fairly sure if one of my teachers used that sorry excuse as an answer with their administrator, the administrator would have an issue. My point in speaking on the search last month was because Vice President Tice stated that she was going to be transparent in this process, and there is not and has not been transparency during this process. One of the best practices is to survey your community before you do a search. We're doing things backwards, like I said before. The job posting closed 3 months ago. I have not, nor have the other union heads, have been offered a seat at the table. There have been no staff, student, parent, or community surveys to my knowledge. So how does Ms. Tice and the rest of the board know what the community wants? Ms. Tice responded that they are using data gathered before Ron Lee joined us. And that is unacceptable because, as I stated before, many things have changed, including 3 bargaining units have new leadership. The global pandemic hit and things change just with the occurrence of time. At what point will Ms. Tice and the board stop acting in isolation and realize if it were not for the members of this community, as well as the employees, you would not be here and you would not be needed? In conclusion, the association and the members of this community deserve a seat at the table, and we want you to be a woman of your word and conduct a fair and transparent process that includes all stakeholders, especially the ones on the front line. Good day.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Moving on to the next person is Ms. Janice Williams.
Yes, thank you. And I hope I get my 10 minutes or maybe more because some people went over. But let me first start by making comments regarding demographer's report. Our teachers need relief. We filed a lawsuit against the district in which we won about class size. The district has failed to correct that for the last 4 to 5 years. Our teachers need relief. Our students need relief, especially Our bilingual student population, they need relief. How ironic that Vice President Tice now wants to put community and parents on the forefront with surveys and inquiries about how this would work. But when it comes to the superintendent, she wants to go backwards. Bad move. Now, I've written down my remarks so I don't miss anything. How ironic. Let's put the community and parents first, but when it comes to the superintendent, let's put it backwards. Doesn't work that way, Vice President Tice. Now, for my remarks, since I was discussed at last month's board meeting after my presentation, some members on this current board appear to want to pick a fight with TEA to the extent that this Board of Education seems to be resentful of best practices and guidelines and suggestions that come from its educators, the largest bargaining unit in the district. The board's animosity is evident in comments that come out of their mouths of these appointed board members. There is no need for us to play on words. We leave that to the uninformed. It appears that New Jersey school board training went in one ear and out the other with this board. You want to state publicly that New Jersey school board is guiding you through processes, but when you act in opposition to their guidelines, you state that what they identified as best practices were only recommendations, as was stated about the superintendent search. I expect no more than what we are receiving from this board. The reactionary outbursts, responses from some board members clearly magnify their lack of understanding and knowledge of the issues that are clearly being communicated to them and their continued failure to listen to educators. Instead of seeking or making inquiry to resolve issues, they angrily lash out like spoiled children. Let's be clear, board member Bowie. I know where I was in 2018. Where have you been since 2014 when TEA, its members, and our UNISERV rep spoke on the issue of Amistad implementation and the district's failure to address? Oh, we know what you were doing. You and former board president Jason Redd were unsuccessfully attempting to bring TEA down, which you will never have the capacity to do. You were failing also to get approval for the extension of Superintendent Duran's contract. And in 2015, you were conducting failed superintendent searches, attempting to employ failed superintendents who were home, sitting on their sofas without jobs. You did this not once, but twice. On your second attempt, you hired someone for our urban district who had no suitable experience and who was a superintendent over a one school building district with less than 100 students. Yes, you hired Mr. Bowie and complimented a person like interim superintendent Nelson Rabone, stating that you did not want anyone except him to be superintendent in Trenton. And a few months later, the board had to let him go for selling knockoff t-shirts to our students, family, and community. Your questions regarding the district's implementation of the Amistad into our district curriculum should have been addressed with the chief academic officer years ago, since it is that office which is directly responsible for its implementation. Had you done that, you would have known that the district, in its negligence, placed the Amistad within the arts and music curriculum. Before you lash out at the mention of me calling out your name, it would behoove you, Mr. Bowie, to ascertain the facts first. By this time, you should be tired of Board Solicitor James Roll, and I know he has to admonish you about your outbursts regarding public comments that are made. As a former board member, he has no other choice, and I know this, but to remind you of your role in response to the public. We are the public, the taxpayers, and have every right to question, make statements, and seek resolutions, whether you like the tone, tenor, or manner in which it comes. Your time on this board has come and gone. It is our hope that Mayor Gussiori will keep his promise to the public when he sought his office, not to reappoint any board member who served under the previous administration. With the way the city is being run, this is doubtful. But if the mayor keeps his word, then you will not be reappointed to this board in the spring. Do us a favor and stop being a crybaby every time I mention your name, Jean Bowie. Lastly, the incoming Secretary of Education under the Biden administration supports and has affirmed what I have been telling this board. Ethnic studies should be mandatory for all students, not just an elective, but mandatory. Do your homework and research that, Board Member Bowie. Perhaps you may learn something from the educators. No response requested or needed. Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, thank you, Ms. Williams. Moving on, our next participant is Ms. Sandy Jimenez.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sandy Jimenez, and I'm the third vice president of TEA. During this time, we keep hearing the phrase, do no harm, in reference to not trying to harm people with unnecessary directives and discipline at work. I appreciate that idea. However, this message has not reached the administration at Parker School. TEA has been notified that staff meetings are being scheduled to begin during teachers' lunch times. 2 separate walkthroughs are happening in a single classroom during the same school day. People are leaving PLC meetings crying. Teachers are being hassled about lesson plans for the teacher-directed small group instruction time, which is not supposed to happen. Teacher observations are being rated very low, and when rebuttals are written, there isn't even any acknowledgement given. And to top it all off, lessons are being interrupted all day long to promote flyers for after-school programs and to have conversations with paras in front of students. Non-tenured teachers are being harassed to distribute flyers that don't have anything to do with their daily duties as a teacher during class time, and then are called into meetings to discuss the situation without any union representation present, to be quote unquote ambushed. When this was brought to the assistant superintendent's attention, an investigation was had in which the non-tenured teacher was met with in the same meeting as the administrator who he felt intimidated and harassed by. This is not how an investigation is to be conducted. The climate and culture at Parker School is extremely toxic, and all of this is completely inexcusable. During this time, we as teachers are giving certain considerations and graces to our students as we are all struggling during this time. It's concerning and extremely saddening that these considerations and graces are not being extended to the teachers who are working so hard at Parker School. Thank you and have a good night.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jimenez. All right, we're going to move on to the next person, Ms. Graff, Kathy Graff.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Kathy Graff, first VP of the Trenton Education Association and Trenton Public Schools Professional Development Interventionist Teacher. This evening, I'm speaking on behalf of our members. We are greatly concerned with the toxic work environment our educators are experiencing, especially now during this pandemic. Many of our members are afraid to speak out in fear of retaliation. Board meeting protocols. The Trenton Education Association does follow board meeting protocols by sharing concerns first with our Superintendent Yano and leadership teams prior to further discussing issues during the monthly board meetings. The association meets weekly with Superintendent Yano and recently with the Trenton Public School leadership members. Fortunately, we also have the DEAC committee, which convenes monthly. This is the District Evaluation Advisory Committee, in which various unions are at the table to discuss evaluation issues, create solutions, and establish protocols. I must also add that our TA Madam President Duncan is always available to Trenton Public School leadership to discuss any issues. However, during these said meetings, procedures, protocols are agreed upon and information is disseminated district-wide. But there are times that accurate information gets lost in translation. There is a different message communicated to our members. Inaccurate communication is causing additional and unnecessary stress to our members. Studies have shown, and this is quite logical, quote, the stress in teachers can lead to increased student stress and worse academic outcomes. The well-being of teachers is essential for the well-being and academic outcomes of students. Please keep in mind that this does not happen with all administrators. We have successful administrators effectively leading their staff now during COVID and pre-COVID. Let's think about Zoom fatigue. Studies have shown that it takes 3 times the energy and it is 3 times more difficult to engage others remotely. And this is 3 times more exhausting. These are the studies. Our educators are now spending 3 times the amount of preparing for our students, 3 times. However, additional planning periods have not been added, nor does anyone have 3 extra hours in the day. But our dedicated educators continue to provide quality instruction as they reconfigure their personal practices to learn how to teach remotely, all while continuing to support our students, families, and the community. Yet we have administrators who are unfairly evaluating our educators with a pre-pandemic mindset. As Ms. Yoon had shared with us earlier, she is a victim of this. Even Governor Phil Murphy clearly stated that no harm is to be done to educators and to students during this pandemic. However, some members are still feeling bullied and targeted. Also, how does toxic work environment affect our vacancies? Just this weekend, close to 20 positions are posted. And on tonight's agenda, we have 70 student interns to be assigned to various educators district-wide. Now imagine their impression of building leadership if they experience a toxic work environment. First impressions will be made and the district will lose out on filling our many vacancies. In closing, I'm asking for grace. This is a pandemic. We should not be operating business as usual. We need to pause and recognize that we are still in a pandemic and we need to treat each other with grace. Thank you and have a good evening.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Graff. Moving on to our next person, Dr. John Ginden.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, Board of Education and Acting Superintendent Yano. My name is Dr. John Ginden, and I am a teacher at Rivera Community Middle School. I'm also the current treasurer of the Trenton Education Association and the co-chair of their negotiations team. Tonight, I want to talk about the potential reopening that was supposed to happen in February 1st, but thankfully got moved to May 3rd. I have a few simple questions. What is the hurry in reopening our buildings during a pandemic? Why are we in a hurry to get everyone into the buildings? Many of the buildings are not ready and may never be ready according to CDC guidelines just because of the age of the buildings. I know that there have been plans to get them ready and yet still are not ready. Also, what is more important, to get our students back to school or to have people get the virus and die, or at least be very sick? What was the logic behind this decision? As teachers, we would love to be with our students in the classroom, but not at the cost of putting lives on the line in an unsafe environment. Also, as the co-chair of TEA's negotiations team, we have only sat down a few times early in the process to discuss negotiations of teacher conditions under the umbrella of the COVID virus, and still not come to any type of agreements. Are these decisions to reopen arbitrary decisions, or have all the union leadership teams played an equal part into the input of the decision-making process? If not, then there is a total disregard for the safety and welfare of the professionals that you have hired to teach our students. A final concern regarding reopening is with regards to the parent survey that went out. I know the importance of getting feedback from our parents with regard to our students, but to tell the parents that if they do not respond to the survey, their children will be put on the hybrid list to return first is very concerning. We are not going to win our parents over by making alleged threats to get them to comply. We as a district need to come together and work together to prepare for May 3rd, if that is going to happen. If all the guidelines can't be met, which includes 70% of the population being vaccinated, even with the country being behind in that area, If all the stakeholders are not involved in the process, and if the pandemic is still out of control, seeing that there are new strands developing even as we speak, then there is no way we can reopen even in May. Finally, if it is determined, and I really want you to hear this part because, I want you to understand the necessity and the dangers that come with this. But if it is determined by the district that it is safe for everyone to go back to school, and it is determined that it is safe for those of us on the front line, which includes the staff and students in the schools, then all these virtual board meetings also need to cease and need to be live in person, because if it's safe for us, then for sure it is safe for you. Remember, health and well-being of all the students and all the staff, all of us, are more important than reopening in May. Thank you so much for your time.
And I thank you, Dr. Gendon. All right, and I'm moving on to our final speaker. Our final speaker for this evening is Mr. Darren Freedom Green.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Interim Superintendent, Board President, Ms. Addy, board members, and to the community. My first point is I thought you guys did an excellent job at the City Council meeting answering the questions. My suggestion, though, Mrs. Addy, Board President, is we keep a representative at that meeting even beyond the bond issues. What happens at the council meetings is when nobody's there, a lot of assumptions, misinformation is given out, and the district is painted as a place where there's no vision, there's no direction. Information is talked about in terms of the schools and what people are doing. And what I find is the negative stigma is attached to the district because nobody's there to answer these questions directly. So I would say after you resolve the bond issue, someone needs to be there from the district on a consistent basis so that you're always getting directly from the source. The last piece would be the city government has to take ownership of making sure the district is the #1 institution in this city. I'll keep saying it when I campaign. I'll keep saying it when I talk here. If our schools are seen in a negative light, people from the outside won't come here. If they're seen that way internally, people who live here will keep exiting here. We have to move our district to a positive place. It is a lot of work. I don't work for the district personally, but I see myself as an ambassador of the district, and I'm responsible for its picture. I'm responsible for its productivity. I'm responsible for it being a better place. I don't think you always need to get paid to care about something and to love and see it do its best. So that's just where I'm at. Second, I've now begun to do outreach with Trenton Housing Authority, going out and meeting with the babies who are not showing up on the screens. You actually have 67 days, and on the list I have 25 to 30 children who are not showing up at all. We should be deeply concerned about the disconnect in this district with our babies who are not showing up. When I go out, I'm documenting what I'm doing. I'll turn this information in so the district can be aware of it. But I'm also talking to the parents as well, because if you just talk to the babies and don't talk to the support system, it becomes a losing battle. So I'm just deeply concerned about that, and we should be as well. Last but not least, we're now entering the sports season, and I would say to all on the screen, we need to keep talking to the parents and the babies and reminding them about point A to point B. As I say to them when I talk to them, we're not the NFL, we're not the NBA, we don't have that kind of money and resources. And if this season is to be sustainable, they need to go to point A, point B, and get where they're supposed to be so that we do not have the chance of infections and that we do have a productive and constructive season. I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and hopefully we can keep working together to make our district a better place.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Green. Appreciate you. Okay, and as far as I know, then that concludes our public participation. I was missing a Miss Osceola and a Miss Estella Harris, and I don't see them on screen, so we'll close out and move on. Well, anyhow, we'll close out and we'll move on. Moving on down the agenda, at this particular time, board member comments is where we are. So the floor is open for board members. And again, I thank all the participants for their patience tonight and also for their participation in the public participation session.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Who's that?
I just,
Jenny?
Yeah,
That's Jeannie, and then Gerald.
I just wanted to say to Freedom, I am in attendance at every city council meeting. So I'm well aware of what's going on. And just so you know that there is board representation at every meeting. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jeannie. Gerald?
Yeah, just wanted to make sure I address the bed bug policy. We can certainly take a look at that, Talithia. We don't have to pull it tonight, but if there is any adjustments or revisions that we need to take a look at, please contact James Roll, email him, and okay with Alfonso, acting superintendent, if that's okay. I think that's a very good course of action. There's no substantive changes. We probably can get that approved next board meeting. But please let us know what your concerns are in writing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gerald. Yolanda?
No comments tonight.
No comment? Okay, all right. So if there are no additional comments, we'll move on. We'll move on. All right, and in terms of moving on, we heard a lot from the demographers and certainly from the demographer, and certainly I'm looking forward to the conversations with the community for their feedback and feedback from the entire district in terms of the look or the proposed reorganization based on the demographer's report. So looking forward to those conversations and looking forward to figuring out where we're going to go and how it's all going to play out for the upcoming school year. All right, so extremely important, and very happy to hear of that partnership, which I was not aware of, between the College of New Jersey and the Middle School Association. Sounds like they're doing some great work, especially around trauma, which we're all being traumatized at this particular point. So we might all need to, not in addition to our students, but a lot of us may be able to benefit from those particular sessions on trauma. So I'm glad to hear that that is moving forward. All right, so at this particular time, then, if there's no other comments, board discussion and action on the consent agenda. Any board discussion relative to the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none. I know that Gerald just said that, we will proceed with the bed bug policy, but if it needs to be relooked at, it can be lined up again in terms of after it's reconsidered for a second reading. All right, and so at this point, if there's no discussion, I will take a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the meeting minutes, the superintendent's recommendations, as well as the board policies, as well as the 2 addendum that were presented. And the board policies included one where the Federal Families Coronavirus Response Act was rescinded. And then a number of policies were listed for a second reading. And again, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
The roll call: Jean Bowie,
Yes.
Nicole Bourgeois,
Yes.
Yolanda Lopez,
Yes.
Teron McKnight,
Yes.
Gerald Trueheart,
Yes.
Jeannie Weeklam,
Yes.
Sade Williams, absent, Addie Daniels Lane.
Yes.
Motion passed with consent agenda and second reading of policies.
Okay. All right, and so our old business is up next on the agenda, and the old business is the response to the public participation concerns from the December 14th, 2020 meeting. And the first concern was brought up by Ms. Grooms, and that particular concern had to do with the topic of autistic students, curriculum for life skills programming, students being turned away for registration at the preschool level and other levels, and asking the board to make those accountable with regards to these particular matters. So in terms of a response, the first thing relative to the notion of students being turned away for registration about the birth certificate, I'd like to note that there is a meeting being set up this week, later on this week, to address those concerns regarding registration and the birth certificates. Some other information relative to the autistic students and the curriculum for life skills. Some of the things that are being considered to address some of these concerns: the hiring of more special ed teachers and in-district classroom paras, and expansion of program classrooms across the district. There is a movement to create another autism hub at Monument and expand autism into Tanga. These plans are in the works. Board certified behavior analysts and therapists, OT, PT, and speech therapy with life skills and autism experience were requested, budgeted, and added to our related service teams. In some cases, there are a few vacancies, but again, those items and those staff members were budgeted for. There is, in fact, more investment being put into licenses and training that's added to programs. Internal candidates are being recommended to help research, write, and produce a guide to address the needs of these programs with a focus on 3 to 21-year-olds. And also IDEA funds are being set aside to provide manipulatives, materials, supplemental supports for the teachers and students in these particular programs. And there is a proposal to have the curriculum committee to begin work in February and wrap up in May for a June presentation to the board so that the curriculum would be updated with respect to those particular students. Next concern was a concern brought up by Ms. Jonette Smart, wants the board to follow up on vendor complaints. And she also wanted to address obstacles for early childhood vendors in purchasing devices due to funding. And again, in response to her concerns, there is a meeting being set up to discuss it, and that meeting will take place later on this week. And in addition to that, it was noted that preschools have received 100% of their funding, even if of their projected funding, even though many of them have not met their projected enrollments, they're still funded at 100% of their projected budgets. So that was noted in terms of preschool. And again, a meeting to address those things is being set up. Darren Freedom Green brought up the need for SROs, additional district community engagement, reopening plan timelines, and improved communication with parents so that they can better plan for their child's return to school. Parent liaison gave us information about Monday weekly virtual meetings that discuss parent and community resources that are available. Parent liaison has a leadership series that is ongoing and continues. There are parent town hall roundtables where there are expectations, and in fact, there is execution on the following dates: Thursday, January 21st, planned for February the 17th, planned for March 24th, and also planned for April 28th. There is a meeting link created for all of the events. Flyers are created and posted to social media, Parent Connect site, and also on the district website. Community engagement focus. There is a program called Camp Kids Closet, and it's working on receiving orders for school pantry closet supplies and materials for 10 schools, and delivery will happen at the end of January. And also there was a meeting with the Mercer County Youth Services Commission to discuss support programs for schools. All right, so that was in response to that particular concern. There was another concern about winter sports starting with COVID numbers on the rise. And the response is that the athletic director has submitted a comprehensive sports health and safety plan that was approved by the Trenton Health Department and central office. Another concern was raised about the board Zoom meeting and the platform. Members cannot view meeting unless they have a Facebook account. There was a concern about the superintendent search, board not following US DOE protocols, not involving associations, members of the community, staff, and parents in the superintendent search, board not investigating complaints accurately, and board not following up with the associations. So those were some of the concerns. And so it was noted that we do listen to the concerns. And so tonight we are starting to use YouTube as another way of streaming the board meetings. So then that particular piece was addressed. The YouTube channel does not require any sign-up registrations to view the particular meeting. The facilities, okay, okay. All right, let's see the other issues on there. Okay, board not following its own protocols. The board is following the protocols that were outlined by New Jersey school boards, and the New Jersey school boards is providing the school board with protocols and guidance. And as was stated earlier, the survey for community as well as all others will be posted in English as well as Spanish. That will take place next week. And there will be a community forum that follows that will in fact tap into the community and their ideas and thoughts about the current superintendent search. So those particular things are are outstanding and coming up. So please pay attention to the district website so that you can get that information when it's time to complete the survey and also when it's time to participate in the town hall. Another concern was expressed about ethnic studies and concern about stopping winter sports. The number of athletic scholarships, teachers should not be entering classrooms or schools before opening. And they were not in agreement with the superintendent search process, which again, we just said is being guided by the New Jersey school boards and our representative, which we meet with and guide us on the process. And certainly we are following those particular guidelines. And again, as was stated previously, the athletic director has submitted a comprehensive sports, health, and safety plan that the health department of the city of Trenton, as well as central office, has approved. The primary purpose for students to participate in sports has to do with a whole lot of things, and it's not just about scholarships, but that is a part of it. A number of things: community representation, fitness, improved academics, teamwork and cooperation, positive mentorships, social relationships, leadership skills, time management, and a success mindset. And the final piece is that we are in agreement that teachers should not be entering the building at this time. And so directives have gone out to that particular point. Ms. Martinez spoke about facility complaints. Sanitizers not working. We need to know the location so that they can be, that if that is the case, it needs to be rectified. So please let us know the locations in terms of that. The facilities report not addressing air quality. The report is designed to address the number of air changes per hour, ACH, in a classroom to determine how many air purifying units are required. All right, and so that was the purpose of that discussion relative to the air quality. Custodian trainings are ongoing. Trainings are being provided in various areas in addition to daily on-the-job trainings by the full-time district staff. And a public notice about, there was some mention about the sunshine law and 48-hour rule for board agenda posting. And it was noted that every public body must publish its meetings within 7 days, notice of its meetings within 7 days of its annual reorganization meeting, or whichever is later. A 48-hour written notice must also be given for any regular, special, adjourned, or unscheduled meeting, given the time, date, and location, and as complete an agenda as is known at the time. The notice must be prominently noted and posted, and I believe ours is posted according to this 48 hours ahead of time, and that concern was brought up again this evening, and it was noted that the agenda was posted on Friday, and so Friday to Monday would leave 48 hours. 48 hours. There are such things as an emergency meeting, which may be called by a 3/4 vote and may be held only if substantial harm to the public interest would result from a delay and the need for the meeting could not have reasonably been foreseen. Whenever possible, the body must provide at least 48 hours notice, and discussion must be limited to the matter which prompted the emergency meeting. Okay, and those are calendar days. In terms of the 48 hours, it relates to calendar days, not necessarily business days. So again, the 48 hours is about calendar days and not necessarily business days. So those were some of the concerns from the meeting before. And again, you know, we continue to try to address the concerns that are brought up. And I know that it was said that the board is not properly investigating, but the board does not investigate. The board does ask that certain individuals, the superintendent, direct the particular person to investigate certain ideas and certain concerns that arise, because the board is not the body that does investigations. That's the operations that we don't that the board does not engage in. All right, so just a note there. All right, and so with that said, that is the end of the addressing of the public concerns from last week, the last board meeting. We have any new business at hand? Hearing none. Hearing no new business, then at this particular point in time, then I would ask for a motion to move into executive session. And in order to do that, I must first read the executive session resolution, January 25th, 2021. Whereas the Open Public Meetings Act, codified as NJSA 10-4-6, permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting under certain circumstances, and whereas the Trenton Board of Education is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, indicated as follows. Any pending or anticipated litigation or contract negotiations to which the board is or may become a party to, and any matter falling within the attorney-client privilege to the extent that confidentiality is required to preserve the attorney-client relationship and allow the attorney to exercise his or her ethical duties as a lawyer. Matters captioned, proposed settlement agreement, LT versus the Trenton Board of Education, Trenton Custodians Pay Scale. Personnel matters related to the employment, appointment, termination of employment, terms and conditions of employment, evaluation of the performance of, promotion, or disciplining of any specific prospective public officer or employee, or current public officer or employee employed or appointed by the public body, unless all individuals who could be adversely affected request in writing that the matter be discussed at a public meeting. Matters captioned, legal invoices. Now therefore be it resolved by the Trenton Board of Education, County of Mercer, State of New Jersey, that an executive session will be held on January 25th, 2021, for the statutorily permissible purposes indicated in this resolution. Be it further resolved that action may be taken by the board when it reconvenes in open session. Be it finally resolved that the minutes of the executive session with regard to the above subject matter shall be disclosed to the public at a later date, and to the extent that the same is not prejudicial to the interest of the parties involved, no longer adverse to the public interest, or does not endanger any individual's right to privacy. That is the resolution. And at this time, I need a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Jean Bowie,
Yes.
Nicole Bourgeois,
Yes.
Yolanda Lopez,
Yes.
Teron McKnight,
Yes.
Gerald Trueheart,
Yes.
Jeannie Weeklam,
Yes.
Sade Williams, absent, Addie Daniels Lane.
Yes.
Motion passed. We're
All right, so
moving
this
to
time we're
executive
moving
session.
to executive